Once again, I'm just going to say before I start this video that anyone who needs 100% proof of anything, anyone who has to rationalize every single thing in their life and in their existence, every single person that needs 120% proof, factual, physical proof to say that something is true, then to be honest, you'd probably best to turn me off straight away because I don't think that you could. I don't think that even our facts in this world are really true. So therefore, you know, we base our truth on the facts that we already have. So if, as some of us believe, that we're living in a totally fake world anyway, a total constructed world that doesn't really exist because it is artificial in every way. It's not a reality. We think it's our reality, but it's a false reality because it's set up. It's not random. But at any rate, the point is that what I was going to say was if you are like that, this sort of video really is not going to be for you in any way. I would still hope that you give it a listen because something might be of value to you anyway. I don't know. But I know myself. It's if I think like I used to think, where everything had to be 100% proved, um, you know, then I would not listen to this sort of stuff. And it is hard to prove because if you are living in a false world, but most people believe it to be true, and they don't believe they're living in a computer like matrix reality, they don't believe that and they don't see it. Until you see it and it comes down on you, literally, unless you're a very advanced human being, because I'm not one of those. I've said this before. I wasn't a truth seeker at all. I was not looking for anything at all, but the matrix come down on me, and by that I mean it exposed itself because my belief now is we're spiritual beings in a physical body. Our thought creates reality. We're all connected, and everything is frequency, vibration, and energy. And we are part of that. We create it, we interact with it, and we are in an artificial world that is not ours at all. We have free choice in it in the sense that we can still make decisions, but we cannot control, even though our thought creates reality, we cannot control most of the circumstances around us. This is because the matrix now is we no longer create our world separately with our thinking or even by our actions. The matrix, the world around us has been, we have given it over to another force, shall we say, other entities, whatever you like. I'm not going to go into details in that. I think I might have in other videos, and I will, if I still can, I will try to be more detailed in other videos because I know that's another thing people seem to want to have. This is why I say these videos are not really for everyone. They should be. And if you start to wake up a little bit, they will be. In fact, you won't even need them. You will, well, you might still want to listen to them as I do. I listen to other people's videos and enjoy them, even if they're already telling me something that I now agree with. But it's still nice to get that reassurance, yeah, because I need it too, that what you think is true and that you're on the right track, and that, but essentially just that reassurance that you're not alone, because there are a lot more people that don't think this way and don't see it this way than what there are that do. So many more, it is overwhelming. And this is not, I think, how it's meant to be. I think humans have been deliberately closed down, just as I was, and still am to an extent, by the sense that even though I know things, I'm physically and mentally still bombarded, and more so, much more so, because while you work for the matrix, shall we say, and a part of it, and you contribute to keeping the frequency low, as I've said before, you will be a little bit more left alone. Also, the reason that the matrix exists and people are not aware that they are in a controlled matrix system, really, total operation, 100%, okay? Most people are not aware of it because we are allowed to have the illusion of freedom, that it is random and that we have some power in it. The only power we really have in it, if we have any at all, is that we do have choice, but because we're unaware we're in it, we don't take that choice as being that important when we're making our choices. We think, oh, one wrong choice is not going to change the world anyway. Sometimes it actually does. This is the joke of it. But we're unaware of, because we're unaware that we're in the matrix and making choices all the time, we don't realize that that's really all we have, is the little choices we make and the vibration. This is the main thing, I believe now, because otherwise I would not have become aware of the matrix. Because if you're not someone who's out there in the world and who is influential and really does have some power and some influence over the masses, shall we say, then there's no reason for the matrix to come down on you or to expose itself, as I've said before. And that's why I realised that this vibration thing is important, because it doesn't matter who or what you are. If you raise your vibration, you have as much power as the president or anyone else, because that's how this world operates. It is a frequency, vibration, spiritual zone, even though we don't know it. This is what I now have come to that conclusion. Too late for me, unfortunately, but you know, if you're younger and you can use this in your life and experience, it could well not only change the world, but change your life to where, but the secret is how to do it without, that's the problem now, because we have given so much of ourselves over to the matrix and to the technology, which is a big part of the matrix. We are not operating freely to where we can all just raise the vibration without having the counter attack, shall we say, to bring it down from the matrix, because this is how the matrix works. And at any rate, I'm rambling again, and unless you're really already on that wavelength, I'll be losing you. But at the same time, I was going to talk about movies today. That was what I was going to talk about, but I'm actually changed my mind at the last minute, even though I will get back to that because I think it's very important. But also I think you can learn more from the movies than from me, okay? Much more. But you have to look at them the right way. That is the secret. It's not the movies themselves, because if you go, all I can say before, I'm not supposed to be talking about this, but all I can say is if you go to see a movie for pure entertainment, then you are merely going to the movies for the movie to be, then you are going to the movies the way the Matrix wants you to go to the movies, as pure entertainment. Movies are not entertainment. They are not entertainment at all. Sure, you can enjoy them. In fact, I say good if you can bring your vibration up and enjoy them, but never presume that that's all they are. Not unless you're already enlightened, as I don't know how many people are, but, and I'm not one of them, but I'm aware. I'm aware though. But you need to get enlightened. It's no good even being aware if you don't raise the vibration and don't get enlightened. By enlightened, I mean to the highest vibrational level, okay? And that's where you know everything, and to where you have unlimited abilities, etc. And then you have no longer any need of the matrix, and you can, you know, the title of the video was Dermot Beats the Matrix, and I'll get back to that. And that's the idea, is to leave the matrix, or while you're in it, essentially beat it by raising your vibration and not being part of it and ignoring it. If that's and that is the trick, and that is the hard thing to do. See, I'm aware, but I still cannot ignore the matrix. And also, it is very much once if you don't do that quickly, and you don't do it to where you got to a certain level very quick, the matrix will come down on you to counter that, because it has to keep the frequency low, because this matrix only exists while it's low frequency. You know, I don't understand it. I just have the information and I believe it to be true. And I have enough, for myself, I have enough circumstantial evidence, some people would say, for it to be valid. But I have enough personal stuff to know it to be at least true to a certain extent. And once it gets true to a certain extent, then you can take it further, because, and even if you don't take it further, even if you just, if you actually see it for yourself and know certain things to be true, you've already realized that you're in a matrix. So already you know that your reality is not real. And so then it's just a matter of seeing more, really. But that's how it goes. But seeing the matrix, and like I say, most people will need, this is my experience. I mean, some people, even when they are confronted, what I've seen, with much more evidence than what even I would have. In other words, they have more information than what I would have, still do not see the matrix and refuse to, and don't want to, basically, too. That's another thing, which I don't blame them for that, because a lot of people don't want to see it, and I don't blame them, because it then means that they have to admit that their whole existence has been false, and that is very hard to do, hard to accept, and to accept that the things that you liked, loved, and admired, and all these sorts of things are not quite what you thought. Not only just that they're illusion, but that they are different to what you thought. It's one thing to say the matrix isn't real and it's all a setup, but you could say, well, okay, I'm happy to live in a fantasy world provided it's a pleasant one. That's if you're lucky enough for it to be pleasant. If it is pleasant for you, I can only assume that you must be serving the matrix greatly or something, because for most people it is not pleasant. Um, but yes, if you are happy to, but you know, we do cling on to what we know and to what makes us feel safe. I mean, it feels very unsafe as a human being to now realise that you're not really a human being in a sense. You are a spiritual being. Of course, you're a human being. In fact, that's what a human being really is, a spiritual being. All other beings or anything else, even the God entity, is not really spiritual, or at least that's what I have been led to believe, that the Archons are not spiritual. I've said, and this was a question asked to me. So they are a different type of being altogether. And that is why we are in their world, and it is so alien and so hard and so negative. And why it has to be kept that way, because that is their domain, that is their way of thinking, that is what keeps them going. But it is the opposite to what keeps a spiritual human being going. It is counter to a spiritual human being, because basically it's like positive and negative. And that isn't to say that the Archon God or the Matrix, whatever you like, doesn't present good. That has to be done to keep you here. If it was presented as all bad, which it really kind of is, it really is all negative, but it has to be presented in duality, good and bad. Otherwise, humans would wake up to it. But they see a lot of bad, but they say, oh, there's a bit of good too, and yes, we can fight and we can solve this and whatever. And that is then you're playing the game. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate, but then you are playing the game. That's how I see it now, which is really sad to say that to humans, and a lot of people don't like that either, because they're like, then you're saying, what, do you just give up? No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that unless you understand what this reality really is, try as you may to do good or anything, you'll probably be just beating your head against a wall. Whereas once you understand that it's all fake and that it's an illusion reality, and that you are convinced to play this love-hate game, this right-wrong game, in this um, system-like world, which is not a natural world at all. It's a world of systems. It's a world of mind manipulation, mind control. Look, I could say mind control. I could say body control. And I'm trying to get my head around this too. But if you don't like that, let's say mind influence. Now, I don't think anyone could deny that you don't have a mind influence all the time. Every time you watch something, it's an influence. It's whether you let it go right into you or you don't. But if you're unaware that it's an influence, and if you watch too much of it and you have too much of it going on around you, I say you can't help but have it to be an influence. I know that myself. It cannot be helped. You could be the most brilliant mind in the world, but it would be, unless you have got to a higher level, a really high level, high frequency to where you are totally aware. That's why I say, then you will be tricked. But but that was like I was saying about the movie. If you watch a movie and you think it's pure entertainment, you think I can just relax and not be aware while you're watching it, and not really, and I don't mean scrutinize it just as a movie and say, oh, that was an interesting movie. I wonder whether that is, I wonder what that really meant or this. I think this was what I was going to say before, is that until you accept or realize, or at least see the possibility that all movies and all entertainment, that goes for TV shows and even the music too, for that matter, but that is a lot more, you have to be a lot more discerning with music, because music really gets you in. But, and also you're not following a story, whereas even in the other things you might be a little bit more alert. But essentially, if you're just watching it for entertainment and you're relaxed and you're thinking that it doesn't matter either way, then basically you are opening up your mind to mind control, to mind influence, okay? How much influence that is will depend on you, but it could amount to total mind control over a period of time. And this is what happens. This is what happened to me over a lifetime. My very way of thinking who I was, and what I thought was acceptable in the world and what I thought human beings were, was dictated largely by the movies and by programs, etc. Now, okay, so maybe, no, I have to say quite honestly, I was going to give myself a little bit of credit and say that even before I was awake, I might have been a little bit less than some. I was an individual in the sense that because I was terrified of people and almost had a social phobia and that sort of thing, I thought that I wasn't good enough for other people. I thought everyone else was normal. This seems funny to me now, because even though I would still say this is the case, that I don't see myself as particularly normal, I also don't see most of the human race now as normal. They've changed. What I used to see, say, 40 years ago as a normal person, you could rely on their regularity. They thought a certain way. They were very stable in that. Now people sway very quickly to the fashion. And I don't mean the clothes fashion. I mean, well, that too, but it's all part of a mindset, even how you dress. If you wear a tie or a shirt and you're wearing trousers as opposed to a skirt, you're projecting a certain image. You're projecting a certain mind thing over other people. You're saying, this is how I am. This is the image I am. This is me. And it may or may not be. I've never been like that, I have to admit. How I dress has no reflection on me. But for most people, it does, whether you wear makeup or not. All these sorts of things, how you do your hair, that was never the case, whether it's this or that. But it is important, actually, in a way, and I didn't realise this, because even with myself, I wish that I was sitting here projecting an image that reflected my inner thoughts more. Whereas in reality, because I'm so bamboozled by the world and so preoccupied with the world around me, I've actually given up even on the physical demeanour. So I don't really reflect. But I think that because we live in a physical world and people are influenced by it, that's what I'm saying, it becomes important. And the Matrix plays on this. The Matrix knows this. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked again, but I hope you're following me. I'm not, as I've said, I don't think I get it across good, but yeah, the movies anyway. And I'm just going to focus on the movies rather than TV programs or the music. But they're all the same in the sense that they all have influence, and we watch them all the time to an excess, and they they influence how we see other human beings, how we see the world, how we think we should be, how we think we should act, how we talk, how we um, how we see ourselves, because that has changed over time. As I say, what I thought I was the not normal one, and I was living in a normal world, but I was the odd one out, and I was some sort of freak, not normal. And for years that was to some extent true, only in the sense that other people were not fearful of things as much as me. I was more fearful of normal little things that they were not of. But now I sort of say, hey, the world has changed quite a bit, and I'm now seeing that most human beings are far from normal and far from average and far from just being natural and getting on with their own lives and doing. No, they are very much living in this fantasy fake world and operating through it and being totally their whole way of being is now a reflection of the matrix. They're not thinking for themselves at all. So in a funny kind of way, me, who was the odd one out and who wasn't normal, now is starting to I always thought normal, though, at least. Even though I was aware that I had fears and things, I always kind of thought relatively normal or logically. Whereas now I'm seeing that other people think they're thinking normal, but in reality, what they now think is normal would not have been considered normal 30, 40 years ago, much less further. So that shows that they have been influenced. You see, that's what it tells me. And I'm aware that I also have went on that same bandwagon because I have been there and done that too. I have questioned myself, my identity, my this about myself, my body, who am I? Am I really, does my inside match my outside? All that sort of stuff. I've done all that, and I've been there, and I could have went to extremes on all these issues. What do I like? I have a few bad experiences with a human that happens to be of a particular sex shape. So therefore, I think, oh, then it's easier to get along with something else. All these sorts of things. I'm saying that it's all part of the matrix. It's all a mind game, and it's all there to encourage you to play the game and see how far they can push you into absurdity, really, to be honest. That's what I see now. Because what I thought was boring and normal and limited thinking, and what I'm now seeing people thinking, oh, we're broad minded, we're expanded, we're the new age, we're brilliant, we're intelligent. Like, and this is why I say I think we have devolved in a kind of way, because you can be broad-minded, but you can also be absurd and foolish. Just because you're broad-minded and just because you say we should accept every single thing that is presented, does that mean that it is actually the best thing for us as a human race down the track? This is the point that I made in another video, but I don't think I made it clearly, because it's not about me. See, I could say, hey, I want to be this, I want to be that, I am this and I am that. But if I force that onto every other single human being, in other words, like for instance, if I say, hey, I'm not going to have children, okay? And this is just putting it very bluntly. I'm not going to have children. I don't want to. It's not me. It doesn't suit my body. I'm not that. This is not my mind. This is my right too, by the way, and it's true. But if I then start to influence other people that way, and then I end up telling the whole human race, look, you shouldn't have children. Think about that. What does that mean? You know what I mean? So good for each person. If you really can't defeat your own demons, shall we say, because in a way they're kind of demons in a way, aren't they? If you look at it that way, because if you're not satisfied with what you are, regardless of why you are what you are or who made you or where you come from, whatever, it doesn't really matter. If you're not satisfied with what is, you really got a demon. You really are then going to have to fight it, and you're going to fight it physically, mentally, or whatever. You're going to use any means to try to make yourself comfortable, and that's understandable. This is how I was. But you do have to be careful, though, and this was where I was different to a lot of other people. And this maybe is why the Matrix doesn't like me. Well, I shouldn't say they don't like me, but why they maybe think that because they actually prefer it if you then influence other people. Whereas I was like, hey, I didn't want to do these things. I felt I was at odds with myself. I thought I was in the wrong place, in the wrong body, in this and that, and didn't like this and didn't like that, and was not normal in any way. But I never at any stage said, hey, this is the way to be. I always said the opposite. No, I am not normal. Everyone else should stay normal. I accept it in myself, and I might even not mind it in myself at some point. I might even like it in myself. But that doesn't mean it's a good thing for everyone else. In fact, I know that it is not a good thing if everyone, I've always said it wouldn't be, in the past, I always said it wouldn't be a good thing if everyone was like me. It's okay for me to be me if I'm a bit different, or if I have different ideas and I'm uncomfortable with this or that and I want to change it or I want to do this. But no, it would not be a good thing for everyone to be like that. So I just accept, you know what I'm saying? I hope you're getting what I'm saying. Although now that I'm a bit more awake, and this is only at the late stage in my life when it's too late, I now think that the body and this world and all its stuff, because I realise it's all fake, even though quite frankly I would still like to be thinner and more but that's only for comfort. That's for physical comfort. That is not for vanity or for to fit in with the matrix, or to make even my mind comfortable to where because now I sort of say, hey, our minds are really mixed up, you know, so we should really just leave that. In other words, don't focus on too much about what your body is or that or your demeanor, because we are really confused in that area and have been for a while, and will continue to get more confused because we are living in a world where everyone is confused and where everyone can't make up their mind what they are, what they want, where they're going. Oh, look, this is just how it is. And then if you watch the movies and the stuff, that reaffirms that, because a lot of these things then become glorified to some extent. So what is not, what I would have said about myself was not normal and not advisable for other people, is now becoming the accepted norm. See, I'm like saying, hey, don't be like me if I'm not comfortable in myself, because that is really a hard way to deal with life. And it's also placing you much more in the physical instead of focusing on the fact that you're spiritual too. That is the main thing. You then think that you can solve every problem in this world by changing the physical. And the physical will change nothing. It will make you a bit comfortable. Like I say, it's if it makes you comfortable, you know, and you really can't avoid it, then I would say you might have to go for it. But also it could be an easy way out too, because so much more is accessible to us these days. So instead of doing the hard work of spiritually working something through, it's easier to physically do something to change it, or to use physical or technology to right what you think is a wrong. And then you have absolved yourself of having to do the hard work of really spiritually saying, what has really happened in my life to why I feel this way? Why would this be so? Because then you might start to say, hey, this matrix world has done all this to me from the day I was born. This is why I'm uncomfortable. And it's been, and when I say from the day you're born, These days, I would say it is from the day you're born, whereas in the past, this is why things are more common now. This is why we're all more confused, because in the past, it wasn't being hit on us from the day we're born. We were a lot more allowed, at least, to find that out for ourselves. Whereas this is my main argument, is that now we are not being allowed to naturally find out our true selves ourselves. We are getting hit with too much um, uh, influence, and we think that, and we're being conditioned to accept the normal as we're being conditioned to accept the what we would have considered in the past the not normal to be normal, and that everything's okay, which is true. Everything should be okay. We shouldn't really worry about differences at all, or if someone. But what I'm saying, we still need to be aware and try to, I'm saying that a lot of these things, even with myself, they don't actually lead to the essential thing of you being happy and raising your vibration. Sometimes they can give you a temporary spike. I know that myself, to where you fix something. If you think you don't like something, a bit like if you're feeling bad and like myself, always wanted to be blonde, feel that I'm a blonde as opposed to a brunette. I think I used this example. So if I then changed myself to blonde, for a little while, I would actually feel a bit better, because it would suit what I think is my mind's eye of what I think I am, or what I think I should be. And this is because I have been conditioned since the day I was born to like the blonde, you see. And at one point, I actually sort of would have said, hey, I just like blonde hair. Obviously, I don't really like it on everyone, and really, I should have no preference for whatsoever. This is a conditioning of the matrix. That's why a lot of the gentlemen prefer blondes, as they say. A lot of men do. It's a conditioning of the matrix. Not to mention that most blondes are fake, as we know, like the matrix. There are very few authentic blondes. It's all false. This represents the world and the matrix, all fake. Okay, but I've gone off the track again. The point is, the point is that I was talking about the movies, and like I say, the movies, if you take them as light entertainment, that is not the way to take them. If you take them as, I'm trying to get my head straight here. If you take them to be all the possibility, this is how I see it. Movies, to me, represent the past, the present, and the future, all in one. Except that when you're watching the movies, what you see as a future movie, you see as something that may or may not happen, and probably will never happen. Whereas I'm saying it already all is. That's the Matrix presents the truth in the media, in the movies, in that sort of stuff. But we don't see it that way. I'm saying, and this is how I see it now, even though I haven't watched most of them, and I'll get onto the movies, but maybe not. Anyway, just let me make the point anyway. They are the past, the present, and the future all in one. Not every movie, of course, but all of them all combined. And if you look at every movie or most movies, they all have those representations, but they're all really the one, because the past has already happened, right? So that's familiar to us, and so therefore when we watch a movie, we say, that's fine, that's real. We accept that as real. Even people that wouldn't listen to me and say, hey, I need 120% proof of something before they acknowledge it to be real, even though I know it sounds ridiculous when I say nothing is really real, but if everything is fake and contrived and set up, which is what a matrix is, then it isn't really real in the sense that you think it is, or that I think it is, or that I thought it was, okay? If I'll use some examples later and hope that you get it, because it is hard. If you can, If you can do like I've done, where you look at your personal incidences in your life, even on a daily basis, and try to use, but you will have to come from certain basic premise or truth, though, like that's the problem. And then how you get to that, I'm not sure. If you've already got to that or got beyond it further than me, then, you know, you, that's the problem with these videos, is that, you know, you like a benefit to the people that already know something. But I'm assuming that I'm not very far advanced on this anyway, to be honest. But I don't know how far other people have gone or how they really see the whole. I know that I've still got pieces to find, and that's why I don't mention some things, is because even though I believe them to be true, because I know that most people that probably would listen would be very keen on statistics and proof and stuff like that. That's why I tend to want to keep away from it unless I can offer some sort of evidence, because people need that. Unless you've already gone there and seen it, or acknowledged certain. But anyway, with the movies, okay, the past you could accept to be true if you see it in a movie. If you see the present, that present you will assume to be what is happening now. What I'm trying to say is that in the movies, the future is really the present. The present is the past to some extent, and the past is the future. They're all intertwined, but you'd have to get your head around that. I found that hard too. But essentially, what I would say is that the future movies, the ones that you think are not possible, not a remote possibility, and cannot and would not ever happen, and are just someone's fantastic imagination, they are the present. In the sense that they are already in the pipeline and they have already happened, but they have not, they've already happened probably elsewhere, okay? And they are a possibility. If things go according to plan, what is presented there should be a fact and would have already happened. I'm saying now that humans still do have the choice always to change a timeline. But if they go along with the Matrix, they will not change a timeline. In fact, their script will go according to plan. And it does, and it is. And this is because we're unaware. If you become aware that you are directed a certain way and you're in a game and you are being maneuvered along certain lines with your thinking, it's all in the thinking. Everything in this matrix, although it is a physically controlled matrix where you could be literally zapped at any point, and you are physically controlled and physically whatever your physical condition is brought about by the matrix largely, unless you've risen your vibration to where you are immune, say, to illness or to the physical attacks of the matrix, or to the environment, which is the matrix also. Everything is the matrix, okay? And that is why it has changed over time, because according to the vibration of the human beings, they will change the matrix. If the vibration has an ability to rise a little bit, then the matrix will come down more solid at the physical level, if you're following me, which is why I'm not too good at the moment. And this is the case. But if you can already get to your high frequency, I believe, I can't prove it, then I think you are pretty much immune to the matrix. But that's why the matrix has to keep the frequency low, because otherwise it loses control of the matrix and the humans that are in it. And then you can change the reality. And this is what I'm talking about with the movies. The future movies, if the matrix keeps operating and the frequency stays low, then the matrix has full control, 100%. So then the script goes according to plan. So then whatever is in the science fiction movie for the future in the movies, because the movies are all real. They are telling you the truth. They have to tell you the truth. I've said this before. There are many reasons for this, but mainly it is almost, they wouldn't do it if they didn't have to, I don't think. Obviously, as we are toys for the Archon God and the Matrix, they do get a little buzz out of playing with us too. By that I mean that because they consider themselves the masters and us the toys, and they play with us, and because they know that we are not really meant to be their toys, and that we had the potential to be as good and greater than the masters, shall we say. In other words, if we had developed to our full potential. So that gives them even more satisfaction to play with the toys, knowing that they are playing with intelligent toys. Toys that could be more intelligent than them if they reach their high level. They are like the narcissist in our society that is a reflection of the Archons. They're the mini versions, you could say. They're the humans that think and operate that same way, and they have been deliberately conditioned and made that way by the Matrix. They like a reflection of themselves, but these narcissists essentially play with other human beings for negative energy. They don't like to see, they particularly seek out the empathetic, even more intelligent sometimes than them, empathetic human being, and trick them into believing that they are the more intelligent and that they are the more empathetic even, and that they are the more knowledgeable, and then they control and dominate the empathetic, intelligent human being. Whereas they themselves might be less intelligent and they actually have very little empathy, sometimes none. But they end up the master, the controller. They dictate and control and manipulate the empathetic human being. That's how the narcissistic relationship works. I only discovered this not long ago because my life had basically been to where I had never ever indulged in any relationship from my family onwards with any person that wasn't of a narcissistic personality type. In other words, a dominant personality controlling type that I thought was impressed by and liked me, but essentially ended up always dominating and limiting my existence to where I didn't grow or see myself as particularly good, you know, and that's how that relationship works. But essentially, it is often the case that the person who is the dominant force who ends up controlling the other person, I see this now because I can spot these relationships even though I'm not always involved in them. And I can see that the person that appears to be pathetical and is dominated and takes notice of this other person, the narcissistic controlling partner, shall we say, that the other person is actually almost the superior person, but they are controlled and dominated and look foolish to everyone else. And they even look as though the other person is caring for them and is the mother or the father or the God almost, yes, like the God entity. But in reality, that person is just being suppressed because they have more abilities. They are actually the more empathetic. They see more, they know more. Anyone who doesn't have the empathy has not expanded themselves. They've been shut down. You know, you see what I'm trying to say? I'm getting mixed up here, but I'm saying that even I'm both complimenting and insulting the narcissist, and I'm also both complimenting and insulting myself and those that should know better, that are dominated by lesser people often. But we think they are more because they dictate and they impress with their talk and with their stuff. That's been my case in my life. You're impressed by it. They might have better academic qualities. They might have a better job. They might have more friends. They might have more interesting abilities, but they're essentially shallow in themselves because they have allowed themselves, and they should have been superior beings too, by the way. They should have had those qualities and used them to advantage, but because of the 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 fact that the matrix got to them early on, because a lot of, as I said before, a lot of narcissistic and even psychopathic people have great potential and they have great influence too. They can have great influence. That's why they trick us, a bit more. But the matrix knows this, so they come down on them early and confuse them and make them negative towards their fellow human beings, to where their only aim then, instead of bettering themselves and elevating themselves and raising their frequency like they were meant to do, they end up just trying to bring my frequency down and everyone else's. And they usually succeed in this too, by the way. And so then they are serving the matrix indirectly, and the Archon God is very happy, and so are his minions, etc., etc. And that's because a lot of the minions are of this personality type too. But there again, I'm not going to go there because it's complicated and there's more to it than just that. And there are different beings involved too. So different, as I've said before, if you're talking about archons, they're all, that whole group, if you believe it to be true, they are all non-spiritual and non-empathetic towards humans. And because they're not directly in contact, they can just create the havoc here on earth so that we feed them the negative energy, just as the narcissistic person likes to bring the other human beings down to a low frequency because they themselves can't get to a high frequency. Not only do they not believe in it, but they know they can't get to it because they have allowed the empathy and their finer qualities to be closed down. They've allowed it, but at the same time, to be quite honest, they haven't really allowed it. It has been put on them. They have been targeted from the day they're born to make sure that their frequency doesn't rise, because if they did, they would probably be quite influential, because the fact that they can control, even at their limited ability, they can still convince people of more ability, more intelligence, to be subservient to them. You see what I'm saying? It's like the Archon God. So clearly they had the potential to rise and be of a great influence, but they've let the negative circumstances that were put on them by the Matrix deliberately, so that way they could influence. From the day they're born, they have negative circumstances put on them so that they will not raise their frequency and be an empathetic, full spiritual human being. So then they start to feel inferior, but they overcompensate for this by a big ego, and they put a fake personality on, shall we say. And they live through that, and they end up trying to use more real human beings in the sense that they have more empathy, because some human beings have not let the circumstances close that completely down. That is the aim of the Matrix, is to shut human beings down, to shut their empathy and their emotions down, because the power of the spiritual human being is in the empathy, the emotions, the feelings. All these things are their gateway to higher spiritual level and higher frequency. And at that level, they access all their abilities, physical, mental, and every possible thing. They become supernatural. They become all these fantastic things that you see in the movies that you think aren't real. I don't even see most of the movies. They become the wizards and the sorcerers and the magicians and all the fantastic things you see in movies. This is what is kept from humans. So we are now at a mouse level in comparison with what a human being should be. We are treated like mice by the Archon mind parasite entities that control this world. They put us in the little, like they do with the mice, in the little control things, and let them run up and down and like they do with me and you, hit us with high frequency electricity to torment us, to see which way we'll go. This is what they do. literally. And they do this with the mice, and they show you this, and that's what they do with us. We are their mice. We are their laboratory mice in this matrix. That's what we are. And that's because we are unaware of it, so we've allowed more of it to happen. So we're even more at that level now. And we don't realise that the things that we use, everything we use, is all part of their getting us to go up and down the correct things in that, you know, that little maze that they have where they use to test the mice that they have years and years ago, and then they'll do something to see what the mice will do. They'll give them water if it suits them, or take it away, or give them food to reward them and then take it away to get them to do something else, or give them an electric shock to get them to do this. This is what happens to us, except that we are the humans, but we are not mice. But to the Archon God entity, we are, because this is his playing field, this is his game board, it's his world, and we are the toys in it. We are his toys. He plays with us, and he finds us amusing. We are his entertainment. And that's why, as I said, the movies are educational, because educational in the sense that they are knowledge, because they show you what is, what has been, what is, and what will be, and what already is, in a way, because it's only a timeline. Because if you keep the matrix going and you keep it at low frequency and keep playing in it, it's a sure thing. They could put bets on it, you know. And this is why at this present time they're particularly coming down on the matrix with making the matrix go the way they want it, because a lot more humans were supposed to be waking up and seeing the matrix. And once that happens, then they have more of a problem. Then they'll have to change their game plan. And they don't like doing that because they set it all up. You know, they've been setting it up for hundreds of years. So then it's like, oh, we'll have to change something, and they may not know what to do. Because humans have always confounded the Archons, I think. And I wrote something down here, and I don't know whether it'll be of any relevance, but I'll just say it. And I got it from a movie, but it also occurs to me. It says, I fear the devil, and I do. I fear the Archons. I fear their system, I fear their world, I fear their power, I fear their control, I fear their ability to mind manipulate us, I fear their ability to influence me, I fear their ability to change my reality, despite the fact that I'm supposed to be creating in my own reality, because we're spiritual beings, we create reality with our thinking, and we're all connected. I fear the fact that I know that we are being disconnected and only connected by the technical means, which is the Archon's means. That is their wavelength, not ours. We are on their wavelength now. That is how they operate, and they have control of that. We only had control of our natural wavelength. You know, we're all connected naturally, but this has all been shut down. So you can see what I'm, you know, most people won't buy this. But I fear the devil, I fear the Archons, and I fear this world, and I fear everything that is in it. And I always did, but now I know it to be true, whereas before I thought it was myself, my own false fears, you know. But now I see it to be much more the world than even my fears, because I was going to start to push some of those fears down and think, oh, now if I change myself, then the world is really a friendly place. It's not so bad, it'll be okay. I did not know I lived in an Archon matrix, you see, so I, you know. But I fear the devil. I fear the devil and I fear the Archons, but I also fear to totally give myself over to the devil and to worship or to go along with that, you see. And I don't know how many people would feel this way, but this is how I would think of it. So, in other words, you can acknowledge something, see their power, know they have full control of the domain, know that that you will be at that your life will not be as easy knowing this and then not totally accepting it. See, I accept that, but at the same time, I don't necessarily agree with everything that they do. And this is the problem. So it's like, I mean, I'm not, I know it's their domain now, and I know that the bulk of humans have given themselves over to it. Whether they have done this consciously or unconsciously, I can't say, but I assume that a lot of it is unconscious because, like I mentioned, the movies and everything's an influence. We start to think that everything is all right, and we start to think that what was not acceptable is acceptable. But it's not a question of what's right or wrong or what's accepted. To me, it just comes down to if you know all the facts and you can really see where this timeline is going, then I have to say it's just downright foolish to go along with things, even if you think that it's being broad minded, which I did. I want to be broad minded and I want to live in a free world and I want everyone to be happy and everyone to be able to be and do what they want. But if you can see that by doing that, they're trapping themselves, they're foolish to themselves, as I was foolish to myself, then what do? It's very hard then to say, hey, this may seem right now, but this is going along the timeline that will not be good for you down the future, and you will regret it probably. In fact, you will regret it if it goes according to plan, as it must, if we do not really, see, it's not like saying, hey, what you do now doesn't matter. It actually does. This is what I'm saying. It's all the timeline. Everything we do, everything I've done in my life, which has been mainly negative and playing for the Matrix, this has come to the problem that I'm in now, and the life that is more negative and the physical and all that stuff. But I don't blame myself for it. I blame myself for making the wrong decisions, because this is the example that I'm going to get back to in a minute if I got time. But anyway, I was going to just finish up to, I'm so sorry that I confuse you with all this. I really am. I fear the devil, but I also do fear to worship him in a way. I acknowledge him, but to bow down and say that he's always 100% correct is kind of, because he may or may not really love us. And we know that if we're kept in a low frequency and he likes a low frequency domain, he only loves us while we're at a low frequency and being his toys and playing for him, you see. So that's the dilemma. That's the thing. You see what I'm trying to get at. But also something that I didn't realise, I fear the devil, I fear the archons, I fear Satan, or whatever word you want to put. There would be a technological being or beings that you could put proper names on, but I'm not going to go there, and I haven't been told to use those names, and I don't 100% know who is the top ruler at the present time. I say it's a God entity. Would have a name probably, but he or she has not shown that name to me. I say he or she because this is the confusion world we live in now. I personally get a masculine vibe from it, okay? So I'm happy to say that that's a masculine vibe. Now, whether that is a total, it doesn't probably matter either way when you're talking about technological beings, because they don't breed naturally or operate on a male-female way of doing things anyway. That is a human thing, which we are, that is more of a human thing, or at least it was in the past anyway. Most of my life, but hey, things are changing, and this is what I'm trying to get at. We have to be just aware, if nothing else. Make your choices, but do be aware and do look at your life and say why. We don't say enough why. We think it's so much easier nowadays, particularly if this construct, which we call society, which is a matrix contract, tells us that something is now normal and okay. We then think we don't have to question it even to ourselves. We don't have to actually do the hard work and say, why do I think this way? And why what has led me to think about myself a certain way. I think that's reasonable for each person to do that, because otherwise you're not a spiritual being and you're really just going with the matrix, going with the flow, and basically you could easily make mistakes that way too, couldn't you? Because it's no good sort of saying, it's no good throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, and that's what we tend to do. And it's no good saying, oh, I'll get rid of this now, because it seems like the quick, most expedient way, and society tells me it's easier, and why should I rack my brain questioning anything? Why should I use my brain these days? Like, why should I do that? Well, I say you should, because that's what it was given to you for. That's what you really are. You're really an intelligence. You're really a spiritual being. Your body is probably, it's important to keep you maneuvering this matrix. It's your vehicle, but it's not your essence, and it's not really what makes you tick, or it shouldn't be. And if it is, and that's the convincing of the matrix, the same with 100% proof, because the matrix knows that there is no 100% proof. They know that half the facts are false anyway. They know that it's all a fantasy world. But if they can convince you that you have to verify everything, that you have to rationalize everything, 100% rationalize, have to have 100% proof, everything has to be physical, despite the fact that they know that the physical is all a big fantasy construct. It's a laugh and a game for the Archon mind parasites, because they feed off us. We're their toys. They play with us. And they laugh when the more intelligent ones of us are playing the game too. That gives them even more of a boost, because they're like, hey, look, it's one thing to get the ones that we've already had that are not thinking too much, but when we get the real intellects and all the real smart ones to come on side and to and be trapped in the matrix. And they do that by getting them from a young age, and knowing, because they know human beings that have potential. They understand all the genetics and all that stuff, because they're technologically very advanced. They understand how everything works, whereas humans don't. But they also know that if humans did, that they would advance beyond them, I believe. I think I couldn't read what that said, but I think he said, do all the Archons have the same motive? I think that's what it said. I'm so sorry about I've only got the mobile phone, so, and I don't generally answer questions because I just ramble, and I assume until recently I didn't have anyone watching. But do the Archons have a motive? I think all the Archons have a motive. Well, look, I don't, hold on, I don't, yeah, I have the same motive. Yes, that's it. Okay. Yeah. Do they all have the same motive? Well, look, I don't personally talk to them, as you know, and I'm not an advanced being, and I'm not anything, I'm less than most people at this, right? But it is their matrix. Look, of course, they would have to have the same motive, yes. That's how it looks to me. That's how the world is going. Of course, they have the same motive. If they're a collective and they're all in unison and they're backing one another up, because if you take it that, I wasn't going to go there, but if you take it that the Archons are a collective group, and even if it was just one group, it probably wouldn't matter, because even in one group, yourself, you could have like a race of people, and they're all going to war with another race or another country, something like that, right? Even amongst the race that is with one another and on the same motive and on the same goal of defeating the so-called enemy or their opponents. We are the opponents, by the way. Even though we play for them, and they like us and they want to keep us going. But the thing is that you could still have, even amongst those, I would imagine, because they are a lot more aggressive than what humans are really meant to be, even though we are conditioned to be that way and played that way and made to be like them. They would fight amongst themselves, no doubt. And this is the history that I've received, is that they fight amongst themselves. They're like a family feud, as I've said before, I think. But I don't know this because I don't have my abilities. I cannot see them. I'm not at a high frequency, so I am going on information and personal experience. So I'm limited. I'm a limited human being, which we're not meant to be. Um, but but yeah, they could fight even amongst themselves. So even as a collective, I could not say whether they're all in agreement. But as the information is given to me, and as the world is going, and and from the information that certainly the greys that are the lower level of the collective, shall we say. And look, it doesn't matter if these groups don't even exist. I'm just going to say this now because I could be talking through my hat. What if that's part of a psyop or part of a false information? But I do know there is a controlling force that is manipulating this reality. Entities that control and that understand everything and that we're players in it. That I do accept. Who or what they are is only from the information I get from the history and from other sources and from other people that have been studying all these things a lot longer than me and that know, because I don't even know the Bible very well. And yet I now see that there is truth and some sort of history there. I did not know the ancient gods and all the alternative history, and I still don't. I haven't looked into it enough. I haven't had the time. I'm too old. I've got to it only late. I just know that my reality has been changed at a personal level. I see it in my own personal life. It is real, physically real. Okay, that's really all I can say. I can't emphasize that, and that's why I'm stressed, because it is a stressful reality now for me. And this is because it's been shown to me and exposed, because I believe because the frequency was going to rise, and some of us were meant to raise that frequency, and it was meant to be passed around, because that's how human beings really are. Despite all this technological interference and the matrix being controlled by the archons and everything else, humans still had that ability at this time. I don't know why, I don't understand it because I'm not advanced. But there was supposed to be like a wave of awareness that would sweep through. Maybe there are other beings or something that were contributing to this, that are trying to help humans. I don't know. I can't say. Maybe humans really, I would say quite frankly, are meant to help themselves. We cannot rely on anyone or anything else either way. You can use your imagination, and I'm getting stressed talking about it. But yes, if you look, you said the archons, I've gone off the track, but as a collective, just assuming that the information that I've had, that they're Anunnaki, reptilian type beings, human, but reptilian in a mix, shall we say. And and then you have what we were familiar with, as we would not be familiar with as aliens, that image of the greys, the kind of android, almost almost like underdeveloped babies, non-genderless type of beings. Now, the greys in particular, I would say, from the information I've got, and you should really go to other sources or whatever and check as much as you can, and it'll come to you, particularly if you've just broad your mind, be broad-minded in an intellectual way instead of in the way that we are in this society, where we're a lot more influenced by what we should and shouldn't be and that sort of stuff, which is irrelevant, I really think. But anyway, but it's not irrelevant in the sense that it's pushing us along a certain path, but it should be irrelevant to us. We shouldn't care about our physical stuff quite as much. Be proud of it if you want to be, but don't let it be you, because otherwise you're buying into the matrix and it will be used against you. You know, it will keep you in the physical domain, which is the matrix. That's the idea, to keep you, as I've said before. But anyway, the greys, they are the bottom level, I believe, of this collective. And they are totally, as my understanding of it is, totally AI controlled. That means they're totally technologically controlled. They're totally unempathetic and non-spiritual, as are all these groups. to a large extent, okay? Um, and they pretty much would do whatever they're told because they do not have any power at all, because they have allowed the technology to be integrated into them so much that they are just controlled by the other groups, I would imagine. The reptilian human type, I cannot speak for them. I believe that I was informed on some other site that they joined the Anunnaki as an alliance because it suited them. There must be something in it for them. Usually if you align with a group that is not really yours, it's because you have a common goal, that's right, and something suits you. You're going to get something out of it. This is what has happened on this earth, I believe, too. This is why humans have turned against other humans at topper levels, is because they have got something out of it that the lesser haven't got. And instead of sharing it, they've sort of said, hey, we'll keep it for ourselves because if we share it, they lose power. And, power is an addictive thing, unfortunately. And also they might have got tricked too, or conned to some extent. I don't know what the exact thing of it is. Sometimes you can do something, and before you know where you are, you're doing it more and more and more, and then you're further, and then you can't disclose. You can't sort of, like if you lie too much to someone or anyone or to a group of people, at some point, even if you said, hey, I wish I should have told them the truth at the beginning, they would have accepted that and it would have been fine, and I wouldn't be now under the control of this other being, these other beings that have now got the knocker on me as a human. But hey, I'm still doing good, and I've still got the power, and I've still got the technology, and I've still got the money and stuff. So, okay, I'll just keep going. But hey, if I did decide, oh, I've got that I feel a bit sorry for my fellow human beings, that maybe I've become a bit more spiritual, or maybe I've got a bit of a conscience, or maybe I think, hey, they might have been best to stick with them because humans are always the best to play with. That is actually the truth. I say this honestly. You can say what you like about any being, but all the beings that control this world, gods or not, human beings are the ones you really should trust. But I mean real human beings, because human beings are weak. They are empathetic, that's right. And yes, they are compassionate, yes. And yes, they are easily fooled. That's because they have a good nature, because they're trusting, that's true. But they're good qualities. So in a way, no matter who or what you are, you really should trust the human beings. But of course, if you just don't like them and you're the dominant force, well, then that's a different matter. You're not going to do that. But I'm saying that human beings that are on the planet, that are actually on this planet, this earth realm, shouldn't say planet, but force of habit, conditioning, as I've said, on this earth, because I'm a bit wound up, as you can see. The humans should stick with real humans, because even if there's nothing in it, they probably won't do them any harm. They won't have as much nefarious thing. That's why humans are in the position they're in, because they basically trust everything. It's a good quality if they were all alone and if they had control over the domain. And like I say, spiritual beings create reality with their thinking all connected. Everything would be hunky-dory if you really think about it. And they would trust one another and be in harmony. But because this is not their domain and they are played against one another, and they have been slowly conditioned to think not normal and to not be aware of this, but basically to become suspicious of what they should trust and what they would normally. Instead, they trust the powers that be. Instead, they would trust the matrix. But they don't trust their fellow human being. They argue with other people, or they think certain people in certain parts of the world are good or bad. All this duality game that we're playing, that is all part of the matrix to keep the vibration low, keep humans separate. But anyway, I've gone off the track. That fella asked me, or whoever it was, I don't know if it was a fella or a lady, so sorry, I don't mean to talk like this. I want to be very polite and very concise and very whatever, but it's a strain and it's a lot of information, and I don't know how to put it across in the best way to where, the people that already know it, they're not going to need it anyway, but if someone's listening who is trying to get something, I want to put it across so they at least get some idea. And that's hard for me because I'm not used to doing this sort of thing. And my throat is sore too at the moment. But the reptilians would have joined the Anunnaki. I'm sorry to have got sidetracked. The Anunnaki are the ones that came evidently, what was it, 145,000 years ago, something like, when humans were babies, underdeveloped, innocent. They're still trusting and still innocent babies, really, except that they haven't developed all their abilities because the Anunnaki came, seduced them, tricked them, limited their abilities, told them that they didn't have any abilities, closed all that down, and made them believe in the physical world to an extent. Not that they had any power or any creation in it, even though they create the reality with their thinking, directly and indirectly, consciously and subconsciously. All these things that we don't understand. I don't understand it. I only know that I have only use a very small amount of my mind, that my subconscious is functioning. It functions in my dreams and different things, but I am not consciously using it right now. And it could be thinking heaven knows what. And also I believe that if it is at negative vibration, I'm an open invitation to the parasites to come in and create negative energy that goes out to other human beings, and they do the same thing. It goes to others, and it's all negative energy, and it keeps the frequency low. It's kind of like a wire, an invisible wire, but it's all been intercepted by artificial wire now, the internet and technology. And we've had technology, it's interrupted every time you use any technology, even technology that you think you are not interacting with. It is interacting with you because everything is frequency, vibration, and energy. And technology gives out frequency, vibration, and energy. I'm not a scientist, I don't understand it. Keeping it basic, make of it what you will. But the Anunnaki, they are the top ones that came. They are the beings that come from space or whatever you like. And they come to this realm, and they're the dominant force. And yes, do they have the same motive? Oh, I've gone off track, sorry. A collective, they are the main ones, but they have the others as allies. The Greys do what they are told because they are what humans will become if they don't change and realise. Humans will become what the Greys are, and they are right down the bottom of the chain of command, almost you could say, in that Archon collective. The reptilians have a big say. Reptilian humanoids have a big say. They have joined alliance with the Anunnaki for their own means, whatever that is, I'm not sure. But of course they have the same motive. They, and there again, when I say these things, you're talking about different races, which I know none of it really, but it's quite likely that, like human beings, the same situation we have on this earth with the human beings, right? Although we are all one human race, not all human beings are operating for the collective human race. Some are what you would say good and bad, even though I don't like to use that thing. But in other words, some are negative towards other human beings and have no problem discarding them. As a narcissist has no problem discarding anyone in their life once the game's up, once it suits them, once they can move on, once they've drained the person dry. It's the same with them. We are just there for their convenience. We're a necessary evil to them, you could say. Really, that's what come to me now. We're a necessary evil, even though they are really the evil because they are anti-live. Live is live. The opposite to evil is live, and they are anti-live. They are anti-life from a human's point of view. They do not value organic, natural life at all. They only value themselves. They are technical beings, but they like to play with us, just like, as I say, the mice. use us for their technical experiments, for their advancement in different ways, and just for their energy. Um, and for their sustenance almost, the same as a narcissist does, because they are technical beings, so I don't understand it, but this seems to be how they operate. Don't ask me why, because I'm a human being, and this is all very negative, to say the least, to me. It's almost like going into a monster world, going from a sane, normal human existence where you think, oh yes, there's some good and bad, but it's not much, and we can figure it out, and all. It's not like that at all. It's like we are in a world that is literally controlled by demons, monsters, aliens, but they're not of the friendly variety. This is what I'm just going to say. Even amongst reptilian type humanoids, I don't understand this, but I'm sure there probably are. If they come from outside of our realm, they could come from all different places, and like humans, some of them could be quite friendly towards humans, might actually value them, but they might not intercede or have anything to do with us. The ones that, what we have here on this domain, is ones that see us a certain way. They don't see us, they're not interested or see us as potential spiritual beings that should be rising past them. No, they see us as playthings, as toys to be used for their benefit, and lesser by that. And of course, they have made us lesser, and that gives them great satisfaction, because they're like, we don't care what they could have been. We have taken them and made them less, and now they serve us. They are our commodity, you know. Oh dear, I wasn't going to get exhausted like this and say all this. I wasn't. I was going to, in fact, almost, I'm glad for your question, but I'm almost sorry you asked me, because it's exhausted me, and I was just going to point out a few things. But essentially, yes, of course, they would have all the same motive. That is why they are here. That is why they have stayed here. And I'm not saying that there may be some that might be that might change their mind, or might I can't say that. And I'm not saying there aren't other beings and other races and other species and other aliens and other entities that are out there that might not be for humans. But this is a closed off region, what I can see. There is and will be no intervention by any friendly forces or any benevolent beings of any sort, because if these beings existed, which I've no doubt that they could, and they probably would, because if you've got a control system operated by beings that have turned negative for humans and that control the whole thing, of course you could have many positive, just as you have on this earth, good and positive and negative human beings, that some work with one another and some work against others, and some don't like other human beings, some don't like particular races. So they do all this, and this is all, of course, a setup, in my opinion, because we do not control anything. No one, very few humans, especially the vast majority, and especially anyone that has no power, because by power I mean if you've got a lot of money, and if you've got a position or something where you can influence people in some way, then you have power and you have money, and that is a control. It is a form of control, and certainly a form of big influence, and big influence can control people because it influences them, it changes their thinking, so therefore it controls them. How I think is my control system. How I think about the world and how I think about myself is controlling me. If I think limited about myself, or I'm dissatisfied with myself in some way, that is me controlling myself. But of course, if it is coming from an outside influence or from environmental influences from the day you're born, that is your control system. That will determine how you think about yourself, how you think about everything in your environment and yourself, and everything included. Do not think that you are I think the only thing that I now would say is that I'm totally not free. I do not know who or what I am, or where I've come from, or where I've been, or what has been happening in this world, or where it is. I see where it's going now, because that I have woken up. Because once you can get to that point, and I certainly didn't want to, because it's not a comfortable place to be. And this is why most people, even when they're presented with vast evidence that show everything's wrong, they're still clinging onto their fantasy that it's okay and that they have um, some sense of reality and some control over it and some freedom, because the alternative is so hard to accept. It is devastating and it leaves you feeling empty. But it really is the only way to get back something in this domain. I don't know how to do it, but that I think is the only way. But I went too far. I'm just going to use the example I was going to use at the start, the title of the video, and I went way over. But this might make some sense to what I'm saying about it, right? It would at least prove that, you know how I said we are powerless and we don't have freedom, and, you know, like I'm like in a state now where I'm like, I do not know what to do, where to go. I don't know what is going on. And you're searching for the truth. You just want the truth. But then when you see the truth, you're like in the Matrix. Oh, dear, get me out of here. I don't like the truth. It's too much for me. I can't have my whole world taken away from me in 1 second to know that everything I think is false. It's like, but I don't think I'm a spiritual being, because that's never been shown to me. I'm just this little human. And now you're saying that even my little fake human identity, that I thought I was this woman, this man, or this being, or this whatever I think I am these days, that even that is not true, that it's all just a con and influenced by the Archon outside influences. Good gracious, what do you do? And basically, I'm saying that everything you think about yourself, everything you think about your reality, is purely a manipulation of what is around you. Your circumstances, everything is created. Nothing is real. Nothing happens randomly. Nothing at all. How you react to it is a mark of probably, you know, essentially it becomes a spiritual thing, because how you react to the circumstances will determine your future, and it will also give you that stability, and it will actually make you happier. Because I know if I'd made a few better decisions through my life, despite what is happening now, I would still be better off. But instead I went for the matrix. I fell for the constructs. I fell for the circumstances. I fell for the fear, particularly fear. They play on the fear. And particularly if you're already a fearful person because you've been made that way from when you were born, you don't feel secure, you don't feel safe in this world, because that's been the setup. You have not been given a safe family environment, etc. And this is what happens to the narcissist. And the narcissist and the psychopaths particularly. I'm not that, but it's happened to all of us. We all react to it differently. The narcissist and the psychopath, they react to it very strongly. They close down their empathy and their emotional side to protect themselves. And then they don't like humans because they don't feel empathetic towards them anymore, and they see them as a bit of an enemy or something to be just used or dominated. And they become very much like the technical beings. And the technical beings that rule this world then jump for joy, because they're like, hey, look at our little minions. We've made spiritual human beings that should be all combined and all be able to just via vibration almost shove us out of here. Instead, they're playing for us. And you can't blame anyone for doing this, because we've all done it, because this is what happens. And that's how they work it. And unless you actually analyze your life, as I've done, really went over every little thing, every little incidence, and then you start to see that pattern, and you see the people. But you also then have to accept that you are controlled by it. the external forces. Now, a lot of people haven't accepted that because they haven't seen the Matrix yet, because it will be kept from a lot of people to let them have the illusion that they're still free and that they're in the world that they think they are. And that's to prevent them from waking up or to, have that thing. And that will only be shown to them when they have total control, really. Because even at this point, I think that, as I've said before, at this thing I wrote down, I fear the devil, but I also fear in a way to totally worship and go along with him because, you know, but I would also say that they also fear humans. And that's why I say if they wouldn't have to do all this if they didn't fear us as well, despite the fact that we're right down here, even this right low frequency where they've got us totally under control and totally playing for them and treated like animals, they still fear us. They still fear us waking up and seeing the Matrix. And why would that be? Because they wouldn't have to attack us so much if that wasn't the case. This was the conclusion I personally came to. This is how I worked it out. I'm like, hey, they're all powerful, they're the gods, and they control everything for what I can see. But they still feel the need to attack even the lessest of us. And I'm like, so what does that really mean? I can't figure that out. Like, why would that be? Or is it just a way of getting rid of us? Well, of course, that makes sense too. But then why would you, of course, there again, I suppose the example is there's two ways of looking at that. They fear you waking up and raising the vibration, because naturally that means that if everyone's vibration rose, or at least the majority, because it spreads, then or everyone waking up, seeing the Matrix, then of course, then people would make a clear choice, and a lot of people would probably not make a choice to play in the Matrix anymore, because they'd probably say, hey, why would I want to? I thought I needed the Matrix. I thought I needed it. I needed it to survive, and it was my sustenance. But no, I don't need it at all. I have as much power, more power than the Matrix. But I've lost track again. But they fear the human at that level because, I mean, they of course could, because they are feeding off energy. Like me, for instance, right? They could say this. They could say, well, look, we want her to leave the Matrix. You know, if she stays, the vibration might rise. If she was, but that's not going to happen. But we could just get rid of her straight away, or we could make her get rid of herself, which is usually how the Matrix operates. Because the idea is, from what I can see, when I first started to see the Matrix, I thought, hey, must be something wrong with me. This can't be real. But for whatever reason, I never ever at any stage actually didn't think that what was happening was not real. I knew that what I was seeing was real. I knew that I wanted it to be actually an illusion. I wanted it to be mad because I didn't like it. Because, yeah, I would have rather been, as I've said before, seen to be, I would have preferred to have been crazy for a while, be crazy, hopefully get yourself fixed, although these days they don't want you to go there either, because they actually don't want crazy people to be comfortable, because that raises the vibration, you see. I know this is sounding ridiculous, but it's all about vibration. So even if you're a crazy person and you went into the loony bin, and you should be very uncomfortable there, but what if you were someone who said, oh, well, I'm getting help, and it might be more intelligent people in there than on the outside anyway, these days, because everybody's crazy. We're all crazy. And this is really the truth too. I'll get into that in another video about the mental aspects of things, the mental illness issues and stuff. This is something that I come to a conclusion only recently. Oh, I've rambled on again. Oh, where was I? Oh, I'm so sorry. I've lost the track of it. See, I diverged too much. Too much coming into my head, too much information this way, trying to get too much across too quick. I was only going to say a simple story. Look, I lost that train of thinking, so I'm going to go back right to the start and try to finish off. And I'll talk about the movies another time because that is very important in the sense that you could learn more from the movies than from me. I'll tell you that now. You can learn more from you, not from your TV too, from your TV shows too, but I don't follow a lot of the TV shows. And I don't even watch a lot of the movies. But the movies, I'm going to say the movies, but it applies to TV too, particularly the more futuristic things or the more far out things. You can learn from your regular TV shows more about how they want you to think in a personality way, or how they want you to think about to conceive yourself as a human. You know, like if you've got like a love story or interactions, that's more dictating and telling you how to think about yourself and about your fellow human beings or about your partners and all that sort of stuff. Whereas the more way out stuff, that is telling you what is about your world and what will be, what is past, all that. It's all the one timeline anyway, because it's already planned. It's already in the pipeline. Everything is already planned by the matrix. The matrix doesn't operate randomly. Humans, we think everything operates randomly. We think we operate randomly. We only plan 6 months ahead at the most. They do the same thing, except 6 months for us is thousands of years for them. Or, well, maybe not thousands of years. I'll have to figure it out because I don't know their timelines exactly. I did get it from somewhere else, but all I can say is that 6 months for them, 6 months, as I said before, in other words, 6 months for us is nothing for them. Okay? Actually, I got it the other way around. 6 months for me is like thousands of years for them, or hundreds of years, or I'm not sure what the exact timeline would be, but their timelines are different. They live for much longer. You know, I can't be exact. I could look into it, but all these things I've not looked into in detail. You know, that's, I'll say that honestly, okay? So you'll have to look into that yourself, but just know that it is what we would consider a long space of time. They consider the blink of an eye. That's what I mean. You know what I mean? So 10 years for us is a reasonable span, but for them, it doesn't mean anything at all. They're not, 10 years is like planning, you know, 6 months into the future. Not even 6 months for them, probably, you know, like, you know, very, you know what I mean? That their timelines are so different. So therefore, they see things and can plan things totally different to how we would, and that's why we don't think it's possible, because we could not have that concept because we're in our limited timeline that we're in. We can't conceive that, just like we can't conceive of them or this world being the way it is. It's it's too much for us, you know, as you can see, it's too much for me, you know. I know it's true, but I still find it incredibly overwhelming because it is all your reality being pulled, the rug of your whole reality being pulled right out from underneath you. That's essentially what it is. And you have to start again. But how do you start again when you're old? How do you start again when you're not a baby and when you've had all this other stuff put into you? It's like saying you aren't real as a human being. Everything you thought is wrong. And that's essentially what it is. We have been deprived of what we are, what the real world is, and what everything is. And we live in a delusion. We're all living, and we're acting insane too. We're not acting like we're meant to act. We act like the Matrix wants us to act. So, but anyway, I was going to use this example, right? Because it's dark and it's late, and I'm going to be in trouble with whatever. But the example I was going to use was, in fact, I was just going to use these examples at the start and not go all over the place, and I've got nowhere. The few things that I was going to use, I haven't used. And they were personal examples because I think that might be easier. But the title of the video was Dermot beats the Archon matrix. So maybe I should go back to that. Dermot is a fella, a man, boy. He was more like a boy, even though he was a grown man. You know, like he was like 45 years old. He died at 51, okay? But I was not there at that time. So he's dead now and been dead quite a fair while now, okay? But he was about 45 when I knew him. And he was like a boy, though, because he was very innocent. And look, I'll just get to the point. He was classified as retarded by the medical profession, by experts from the day he was born, okay? And I knew him for a few years. Now, the reason I say Dermot beats the Matrix, because he was obviously, as you can imagine, regarded as quite simple, quite silly, I suppose some people would say. Backward. He was backward. He was classed as backward. I did not think he was backward. Okay, I'm going to state that quite clearly. No, I did not. But he was classed that way by society, by everyone else, and by authorities, experts, scientists, medical people, whatever you want to name, that class these things. I don't know. And I was told this. And I believed it, because if you spoke to him, he would not know the simplest things. Okay? He would not know things that even an unintelligent person, what you would class as an unintelligent person, would know. Basic things that you think even a child would know. Some things that children knew, he would not know. So he was quite innocent, and I'm trying to find the right words, but you get what I'm saying anyway, I hope. I'm sorry to lose my frustration and whatever. It's stressful making the videos, and I really just want to, quite frankly, I'd almost just prefer to interact here with the like people instead of trying to actually get some people to listen, or to just open their idea up to perhaps thinking whether there's some truth or some merit to some other possibilities. But anyway, but that is my aim, because otherwise, probably, although as I say, it's much more of a pleasure to actually just exchange, as I've done when I watch a video of someone that says the same stuff. It just reaffirms what I think, and it's just a bit of a like I say, just to know that there are other people that do see some truth, or what you think is the truth. And but anyway, Dermot was, yes, retarded. Okay, now the reason I say the title was Dermot Beats the Matrix is because he did not know the simplest things, right? But I'll try to find an example. But like, once when I was talking to him, you know, and he'd talk about simple things like little dolls and toys, and he liked toys and dolls and stuff like this, even though he was 45 and stuff. But he had that innocence. There was a real innocence and a natural and a kindness there. He didn't particularly see too much bad in people. Even if he did see that someone was aggressive or naughty, he wouldn't actually get angry about it. He'd either walk away or just make a small comment, but he was not like most people where he was buying into all of that. He did live a little bit in his own world to some extent, even though he talked to other people. But that was a good thing. I see that now, that he was protecting himself. And in many ways, this retarded person was more wise than the rest of us, and certainly more wise than me. And I realise this on occasion, even though, because I, like everyone else, is so conditioned by society and so conditioned by social status, I still didn't place him as high as what I would now. I was aware that he had a little bit more going in him even then than what everyone else told me, because everyone's like, he's retarded. But a lot of people liked being around him because he was kind and friendly. Even though he was retarded, he was so relaxing for people to be around, because he did give off, yes, a good vibration, you could say, yes, a good frequency. There again, I'm hitting on it now, and I didn't realise then. But I remember once I sort of said to him, because he didn't bother too much about the hygiene and stuff at times, because he was innocent and he lived in his own little world, and he was not conditioned, and no one helped him either. Very few people actually sort of, I mean, people liked him, but they didn't actually help him. He didn't have anyone to guide him. There again, his upbringing was probably like that, where he didn't have a lot of guidance to show him how to just maintain himself too well. He got by totally on his own as a so-called retarded person and survived. Okay, so he died at 51, but that shouldn't have happened, I don't believe. I believe he should have lived to a really long age, because one thing he didn't tend to have, he didn't tend to worry. The Matrix didn't worry him too much. Even when circumstances or things come against him, his so-called low IQ or thing kept him from worrying too much about it. Now, but I don't look at it that way. As I say, I don't really look at him that way at all. Even then, I actually thought he was kind of blessed in that respect. I could see it. But I said to him once something about, because he hadn't washed and he didn't smell very good. Not that we can all talk, we can get sweaty, but he just didn't, sometimes he wouldn't bother. You know, he would get preoccupied, and he hadn't been shown any of these things, you know, much. That's true. But I sort of said something to him, but in a nice way, because he didn't, he didn't take offence that way anyway. But this showed me at this point that this so-called retarded person, when he gave me a bit of an answer to it, and I can't remember his exact words, but he did say something to the effect. And don't forget, he's this simplistic retarded person who normally says, "Oh, I don't know how to do this, and can you help me?" And oh, the cockroaches gang up on me and stuff like this. He'd see everything in a very exaggerated way. He was very simplistic, and yes, what was classed that way. But occasionally, and this happened to me on many occasions, and I could use examples, I'll just use one, where he said to me, in reply to me making some comment to him, trying to help him actually, but also because it was suiting me, I was being a bit selfish. He sort of said something to the effect, what other people now say but don't mean it, and he said in a genuine way, and he's supposed to be someone who's like a baby almost. And this is very spiritual, really. He's like, you know, shouldn't we just love human beings for their mind and for what they are, rather than what they physically present to us? Because I was making a comment about the physical demeanour. And he's like, isn't it more important? That's right, you should value me for what I really am, what my thinking is, what my spirit is, not just because I might have forgot to wash, or because my clothes are a bit raggedy, and they were at times, I can tell you. If someone gave him something nice, that was it, but he did not aware greatly of any of that. And he's like, you're judging me more on the physical as opposed to what I am. And this is coming from someone who's supposed to be backward. And there were many other examples of that, where he saw through people and saw through me and other situations where he should have had no knowledge to know these things. And yet he was seeing more than what an intelligent person would see at the time, and was almost psychically aware of what some human beings were. He was picking up on things. You didn't have to tell him. He was picking up on it. So that was interesting anyway. And the reason I mentioned him was because I suppose that's an example of the vibration thing. And I would say that someone like him, someone that most people would say, look, the reason the title was Dermot Beat the Archon Matrix is because there will be many people, I think, in this matrix, myself included, like I considered myself more intelligent than Dermot, and most other people would have considered me that way, and they certainly considered themselves more intelligent than him. But I'm still stuck here in the matrix. Okay, so he's dead, he did pass on, but I believe he defeated the matrix and got away from it. Now I'm stuck in the matrix suffering, as are most people, but some of us more than others. So who is the smart one? Now you say, how do you know he got out of the matrix? Well, I think that he was always able to raise his vibration and not be brought down by the matrix and not be angry or hateful towards other human beings, even those that probably didn't see him in very high regard. Actually, he rarely made any enemies, I'll have to say that. In fact, he usually did get people to help him. And sometimes he even, he would take it. Some people said, oh, perhaps he's exploiting his thing. But no, he didn't really. It wasn't like that. He just took everything because he thought he just saw everything in an innocent, loving, kind of good way, that there was no reason to think bad of anything. Despite the fact that the Matrix was operating full force, no doubt, when he was around. Even though at that time I was not aware of it quite so much. Of course, I was not aware of it at all. I just thought my own life was not great, but I didn't think it was caused by the Matrix. But yeah, he was. I would imagine that he would have beat the Matrix and got out of it. In other words, when he passed on, assuming that we go on, because if we're spiritual beings, we must have been here before and we must go on after. To me, that makes sense if you're going to buy into that thing, okay? There's no reason that, in fact, there wouldn't be much point. In fact, you would really say, hey, I may as well buy into the Matrix and actually give myself over to the Archon overlords, the God entity, or whatever you want to call them. These are all titles other people use, by the way. I'm using other people's words and other people's titles because I'm not familiar with it. I don't fully understand it. I understand the concepts and I believe it to be real, but you have to use words and names to describe, just as you would the particular entities we're talking about. They have names, but we don't really know what they are unless you meet one. We don't really understand them. They're not us. We hardly even understand one another, as I say. We're in a delusion world where we don't know what we are and we don't know one another. But anyway, Dermot would have left the Matrix because if there is this business where you leave when you die, this is your opportunity to get out of the Matrix. But most people either come back or perhaps go elsewhere, but they're still under the domain of the Matrix. Very few become totally free and spiritual to where they exit, because they believe in the Matrix while they're here, and they will believe in the trap of coming back or of the tricks that have been played on them here. In other words, a bit like if you die, whatever is your weakness will be used against you. All your human good points will be used against you. All your human bad points even will be used against you, but they're largely put onto you by the Matrix. But when you leave, I'm guessing this, okay, that when you die, you will probably become a little bit more aware of, well, you will become aware for a start, that there is something after, whereas most of the time when we're here, including myself, we believe that we only have this one life, unless, even if you're religious, I think you still have doubts, but that's a different thing. But you've never been there, you don't know it, and you would have doubts. Now, so when you die and pass over, that is your opportunity to exit and get to another realm, out of this closed, mad, negative, low frequency domain that is this earth and heaven knows what else, but it would be a limited area, I would think. This is only putting it in a physical way so that you can get it, because it's all a concept that even I can't fully understand. But if it's all about frequency and vibration, and even you can change things in this reality and be immune to the matrix by raising the vibration, which is what I've been led to believe, then there's no reason to believe that if you have risen your vibration, now the Dermot character I'm talking about, the boy, the man that was a boy that was supposedly not as intelligent or not as good as you or I or whatever, and not, and more backward, shall we say, or retarded, well, all these words that other people put on the description. He was always at a reasonable vibration. Now, his innocence and his better qualities would, I would think, would mean that when he leaves here, that he wouldn't be trapped by all the lies, wouldn't be trapped by all the stuff that went on in the Matrix. I don't think he ever was very much, and therefore he would probably be one of the few people that could basically get away from it. Now, I'm not going to go into details as to how, but I've mentioned the vibration, and I can't prove it anyway. But I am making the point that your intellect and your intelligence and thinking you know everything, as we all do, I'm still stuck here, and the matrix crashes down on me, and he's gone and exited it and escaped it, and never has to come back or endure this negative world, this world that would trap him, because he could have been trapped too. Because I think the more if you do come back here at some time in the future, it will be so changed and it will be so technical that that there may not be that opportunity to leave it. You could be really stuck in it. Now, some people actually think that's okay because they think this is all there is, and they would be pleased to think that there is even a chance to go on living, but that's because they don't believe that the real life is out of this domain, not here. This is not a good domain for the human being. If the frequency was changed and every human being in the earth was able to raise the frequency and therefore change this reality, change it into something compatible with human beings, to where the earth and all the nature and all the living things are all in harmony. In other words, go back to the garden, like I've said in other videos, that would be a different thing. Now, I'm not sure how possible that is. I only know that if the frequency is raised, that human beings do become impervious to the matrix. And whether that means, and you should be able to then change the reality too. Now, whether that means that you would just choose to leave this domain and go where Dermot went anyway, I would think you would probably. But you would have a choice. You would be free moving. You could probably go anywhere you wanted, I would think. Because if you're a spiritual being and you're fully awake, this is just my guess. It's not really a guess, it's what I do think is a great possibility. You should be able to move anywhere you want. And there would be other realms. There would be, or if you chose to stay here and you could change this reality into what you wanted, that would be another thing. This was what was meant to be originally anyway, but it is now a different domain because it is not operated, and it's not operated by humans anymore. It's only operated by either humans who serve the negative God entity because that's his domain. Now, see, I'm not sure about that, whether, as I say, I'm not sure whether the idea is to totally change the domain, but I think even awareness would automatically mean that even at a physical level, humans would just change the physical aspects of it. I hope I'm not doing any symbols with my hand here, by the way. I want to emphasize that because I've become very aware that, see, I've said this before, I'm not at a high frequency. So I can have a mind parasite. The entities come into my mind and actually not only stop my thinking or change my thinking or confuse it, but, and I'm not consciously aware of this, but I know it happens because you can see it happening even before you while I'm talking, can't you? But they can also, what you do with your hands, what you do with your body, this is not under our control anymore either. This is the devastating part of it, even though I know it to be true. I could subconsciously be moving my hands and indirectly showing some sort of allegiance to the God entity because he likes his dominions to show allegiance by symbols. Now, I don't wish to do that because I don't choose to have that allegiance. I acknowledge, but I don't choose to have any allegiance because that means that you are deliberately working for the God entity, but that would also mean that you would have to be working towards the human race going a certain way, and I don't wish to do that. So although I don't condemn humans who have been changed or who have been manipulated to such a point to where they operate for the God entity. They may or may not be consciously aware of this. A lot aren't. But if it wasn't so serious, I would say, hey, I could accept a compromise even. But these timelines that I see now, they almost make me say, well, look, even though it would be more comfortable for me in my life, because if you're in allegiance to the God entity, you will be rewarded at a physical level. It will be easier. How long that will last, or I don't think this comes down to any particular love by the God entity. I will say this honestly. I think that just comes down to service and allegiance and what serves them, because these gods see themselves as superior to us. They have made themselves superior to us. They have set up that situation. Now, I'm not saying that and a god is what you make a god. If you serve someone, if you ignore, it's not just acknowledging. I will acknowledge that this domain is not ours because that's a fact. And if other human beings choose to have the God entity rule, if they choose it consciously, my only argument would be, if there is an argument, is that if people or humans make their choice with full conscious mind, then that is nothing to do with me. I do not have the right to say you can't worship this or that God. That is your right. My only argument would be, I hope that you've got your full mind and that you are fully aware of all the circumstances and where it's going and what it really is, and other choices if there are any. And, because just because you acknowledge a God, this is what I've been told, this is the information I've had. See, we've always thought there's just one God, okay? That's what we've always been told. But if you take the history, you might worship one God, but that doesn't mean there is not the potential that you could worship someone else or something else. The same as if you choose a partner. You choose that partner. You say, this person I prefer over all the others. Well, it's the same with a God. A God is only a God because you put him as a God. You know what I mean? You choose that God. You say, this is the God that I recognize to be all-powerful, I give that God the power anyway. I give him his due, his respect. I give him that for the fact that the reality is that he's now taken over this earth. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't be others that could have been put there too. It just, he might have fought others to get that position. He might have fought his family members or other gods, shall we say, to get that position. By other gods, I mean others that are just powerful, that are beings that have that potential to come and take over another world or our world. But there again, that, as I've said before, that is still an open debate as to, like, if you openly say, oh, I'm going off the track here, I know, I think I've said this before, but a lot of people would say, look, I will only acknowledge someone or something as a god if I acknowledge that being to be my creator. This is how a lot of people see God. Now, see, this is where I would say I would have doubt or not be sure, because I'm like, the human beings that are here in the earth might well be of a type of creation of the entity that rules, but whether he created the original specimen, shall we say, or whether they were already here. My actual information and what I'm inclined to go with to a rather large extent, but this is just my view, because many go the opposite. I have no doubt about intervention. I have no doubt that the humans, certainly the majority that are here in this earth, are of a intermingling with the gods or the other beings. There again, I would have to analyse that and look into it more and get more information from other sources to be sure about it, so I'm not going to go there. Because we do have, as we said before, that with that question, the Archons, 3 separate races. As I know it, there could even be much more. I don't think so, but that's only the information. I do not know all the different races, but 3 different types of beings, shall we say. In other words, they probably would look different and be of a different type of they serve, like I say, the lesser ones, the greys, they would be the totally servants of the other groups that are more superior, or at least have more control and more power, and are less controlled. They're not. They are the controllers of the greys, whereas the greys are totally controlled. They are like the humans on the planet here, where they are they're not playthings. They serve. They serve consciously, I would think. I'm not sure about that, because if it's artificial intelligence, that takes over, and that is then a hive mind. They're all connected like we were supposed to be. This is all, and some people say they are the humans of the future. I would go along with that. So that's another picture, and that's what I'm saying. So this is what I am saying, is that if the greys, who are subservient to the Anunnaki and the reptilian humanoid ones that are the main controllers, but they completely control the greys, who completely serve them, they do not have any input into things that go on. They are merely manipulated for their resources. They have abilities. I would think, but their abilities are only used to manipulate the humans. In fact, I could be wrong, but I have been led to believe that they have the ability to read the human mind and stuff like this. That's a vast ability, an ability that humans should have too, but they don't have it because it's been denied them and held from them and taken from them and etc. But they have that, but they don't use that for their own. They're not independent. They're not independent beings. They serve the others. They're a slave race. And some people say they are the humans of the future, and this is why we have this timeline. And they're showing you what humans will be or will become if they don't become aware and stop playing in the matrix. and stop defeating their fellow human beings. Because if you go, anytime you go against your fellow human being, and you must get your instincts right to know the ones that you should trust too. This is the hard thing. This is something it took me a lifetime to learn, and when I finally learned, the matrix come down. So that's what I'm saying. But if I'd known it all along, you'd make better choices. But you do have the choices. But if you think the choices are not important, they are. Every little choice, even the most minuscule human makes, is a big choice. It affects the matrix, it affects the reality of the world. And we just are not aware of this. We fight amongst ourselves and we think, oh, that vibration doesn't matter. And even the lesser human beings, the more less you are as a human being, the more important you probably are to the matrix. You may not be important in light of a social standing, because that's what you're conditioned to believe. But the beings that control it, you could be very important to them. They would see you and I and a lot of people as totally different to how our fellow human beings and how society tells us. We value our famous people and all those. We think they're just it and all this sort of stuff. And hey, they've got their, but they serve the matrix. And they do not have to be worried about because they are not independent. Like I say, Dermot, they had to let him go. They couldn't hold him in the matrix. They got rid of him in the sense that they didn't want him to stay and live here for a long time because he would have raised the vibration a bit too much, I think. But at the same time, they couldn't hold him and bring him back to the matrix. He was free. So he defeated the matrix, beat the matrix. He beat the Archon matrix, as I say, because he's gone and he is a spiritual being now who would probably, he was never really retarded anyway. He just didn't learn the rubbish that the rest of us learn. He really didn't need that. And, because the things that he didn't know were only things that the matrix teaches people. Some of those things are good to have while you're here, like, okay, so it's good to have a wash and it's good to know a few good things to eat and stuff, but it's not the be and end all, And to know a lot of knowledge that really only brings you down to a low vibration, and a lot of false knowledge anyway. To know about this matrix, to learn about a fake world, is to learn nothing. So Dermot lived in his own world, but it was a world of contentment. He made little things okay. He wasn't doing very well by most people's standards, but he was content in his own little world. Even though the matrix didn't reward him and give him many luxuries, and didn't let him, he was able to enjoy the little things and still keep the vibration. And so, yes, he was able to exit the matrix. The matrix had to let him go, and they said, oh well, we don't want to he can't stay here because he might raise the vibration at this time, because although he's really a nothing and a nobody and of no significance really, as far as most humans would think, if he stayed, he would have raised the vibration just indirectly, not even knowingly. And so he had the potential to change reality. So he was more powerful than your most intellectual people and the people that we would admire. Sure, we have our famous people that have great influence, and they do, but they have to really push it. They can't just do nothing. They really have to work and do certain things to seduce us, in the matrix. Whereas he didn't have to do anything consciously at all. He just had to be himself and was content in himself. And in doing that, he was able to exit the matrix, I believe, because he wasn't as conditioned by all the false things about the matrix. He when he passed over, shall we say, this is entering into the fantasy realm, I know, and it is, he would not have been susceptible to all the ploys that will be put to you and me, and buy into all that, the guilt and the fear and all that. His innocence will protect him to where he'll just say, I'm out of here. Goodbye. I'm now going to the higher realms. I will now go wherever I want. Goodbye, Matrix. Goodbye, cruel world, shall we say? Yeah. And, you know, and I won't be coming back, because to come back in the future, it will be a lot harder to leave, because once you become technical, you lose your spirituality. Don't forget that. And if you lose your spirituality, you lose your freedom to exit the matrix in a way. The matrix is very technical. The beings that control it are very technical, and technology will limit people down the track, as it will limit the human being from doing things naturally to where they can keep going. I've said this before. This is just the downside of it. This is why we have to be aware that everyone doesn't think all the same. It's okay for some people to be different and do their own thing, that's fine, but you can't have everyone not extending the human race, because, as I said before in the previous video, then we go extinct. So that doesn't serve anyone. It's no good saying, oh, I'm me and I'm, but it's hard. All I'm saying is that, like I said before, the problem with the world now, and this is just what I see as a bit of a problem, is it's one thing, everyone should, if you really can't help it, be what you think you are, whether it's a mistake or not, or foolish, and it doesn't matter. It may turn out to be foolish, it may turn out to be okay. Either way, if you have to come back, you'll have to deal with that anyway, whether you make mistakes or not. I personally think, and I could be wrong about this, so don't quote me on it, and don't take it to heart. But whatever you're given here, you're probably meant to experience it and try to make the best of it, and try to spiritually go forward with it. It's a test. But if you opt to change something, in other words, you do what's expedient, which I've always done too, by the way, so I'm guilty of it. We do what's expedient, and so we don't do the hard spiritual yard, shall we say. You will make your life comfortable for a few years while you're here. You will. But if you have to come back, you'll only have to do it all over again. It's a bit like those movies. You know how they show you those movies where you have to keep repeating things until you get it right? Well, that could well be how it is in this domain. You might say, well, look, I don't like this about myself now, so I shall change it. That's expedient, that makes me comfortable. And you will be comfortable for a while. And you think, hey, I'll beat that, I've done that, that's good. But you don't realise that if you come back, you'll come back as what you were supposed to be the first time. They'll make you do it again. And if you do the same thing again where you think you change it, it'll just go on and on until you finally say, hey, and the longer you do it, I know myself, the harder it gets. You get to the point to where then, if you have to keep doing it in a harder world, it just gets harder. Because, in other words, you probably can't you can't avoid changing something you don't like. You can't get away from that spiritual battle, evidently, from what I can see. That's what we try to do. That's what I've always tried to do. But it doesn't get you away from it. It just makes it harder. You get into more deep, But of course, if you don't know that, as we all don't, it seems natural. Why shouldn't you? And this is the problem, and this is the trap that we get into, unfortunately. And that's the hard lesson I've learned too. So I'm not. I don't blame anyone for doing it at all, because it seems the rational, sensible thing to do. But at any rate, I've gone on a fair bit. Now, there was something else I was going to mention before I finish. I went on too long, I know. This is just, look, I was going to try to not prove, but point out in my own personal experience how that business of saying we're spiritual beings, we're in a physical body, of spiritual beings in a physical body, our thought creates reality and we're all connected and everything is frequency and vibration and we're at a low frequency. High frequency means you're okay, you you create a good reality and you are conscious of what you're creating. Low frequency means you're creating things, but that is controlled by the matrix, by the Archon God entities, minions that follow. Just say God, okay, but it does imply a collective, I guess, because even God cannot do what is done on this earth on his own. He has to use other humans to do it. And also, the God entity, as I've said before, does not anymore interact directly with me or you or anyone. We don't know who or what he really is or what it is. We interact with humans, and humans are interacting for him and against other human beings, and all this chaos that goes on for the matrix. So they use humans to create the matrix they want. That is through all sorts of things, religion, mind control, through influence, through believing in what is around you, believing everything to be real, believing what is told you, etc. It's all an artificial mind game. It's a mind game. That's what I said before. But I went off the track again. I'm so sorry. But I was going to use an example of how the matrix can intercede, and this is just a personal example. I was just going to use it. Okay. I'm getting too flustered because time's running out. I used to walk down the road, right, of a night time past a hotel, a big hotel where they had a lot of girly shows and, stuff like that. I never went in there, but that's not the point. And they always had at least one or two security guards outside, as they have outside of most hotels now, and discos or whatever you want to call them. But at any rate, I used to walk past most nights because that was my route for going and getting a few things or whatever. This is a few years ago now, okay. In fact, it was just when, even though I had done it for years before this, walked past it, this is what happened with this particular security guard gentleman. One night, just when the matrix was starting to expose itself to me, and when I had realised that most of the people in my life were of a narcissistic, psychopathic type of personality, and that I had realised it and thought, hey, this is negative, and this is why I'm with the wrong sort of people. They control you, and they don't really care for you, etc., etc. But I'd realised this, and okay, so I'm walking past, and I, the security guard, sometimes they'll say, good night, how are you? Just in being pleasant in walking past. But they stand out there to check people as they go in. That's their job, and, maybe to ask for ID to see if they're over 18 or whatever. But he was very friendly, and I just engaged in a little bit of a conversation, and he sort of said something like, I've seen you for years walking past here, and you've aged quite a bit in the last few years. I noticed that you don't look as good as what you used to, because I always used to look about 10 or 15 years younger, like always looked like real young up until, I really did. And even I was not consciously aware of it. People used to just say it to me, only if I mentioned how old I was. But anyway, and I was a bit aware of it myself because I felt really bad. I felt psychologically bad because I had just pulled myself away from a narcissistic relationship, but it devastated me because I didn't want to. It hurt me. And but he said to me, he said, I've noticed how you went down. And I was surprised, you know, and he said, have you been in a narcissistic relationship, and has that been the problem? And I thought, oh, wow, you know, wow, like, how do you know this? And why would you say this to me just out the blue? You don't even know me. You said you've seen me going past, as I had seen him and various others too. You see, if you see familiar people around you, you notice them, but you might occasionally say hello and that's it, you know. And then he started, and I sort of said, well, yeah. And then he started to tell me how he had been in a narcissistic relationship with his wife, and etc., and how that had always been the case for him, and he started to talk about it. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I really felt a very close natural connection to this fella, and thinking, hey, I can learn from this man, because, and also I can exchange, because I was very traumatized and very stressed and upset by the loss of the relationship, and the realization of what it had come to, and the realization of what the relationship was and what the personality types were, because I didn't know about these personalities and things. I only learnt it from, yes, the internet. And it made me make a wrong decision, in the sense that, this is why I say the matrix gets you and tricks you. I'm gone off the track here, but I still made a wrong decision even though I became aware of the truth. Even the truth can be used against you by the mastermind, matrix, Archon, controller God and his minions. That is the joke of it. And that I only realised, of course, recently. So I knew the truth, and I thought I had made the right decision, because I thought there was no other alternative. Because if someone is going to defeat you and destroy you, you have no choice but to let them go, or to at least, you don't at that point I thought my life depended on it, and it may well have, but I still made the wrong choice, because maybe there was, I believe now I still made the wrong choice. I won't go into that, but at any rate, at this point I had a sense to bond with this fella and wanted to talk to him more. Anyway, I talked to him for a little bit there that night, because, you know, he has to do his job. But theoretically speaking, he could have stood out there and talked to everyone going in and out, because actually that's actually a good thing to do. You talk to customers, they go in. But anyway, the next, might have been a few nights later, when I saw him again, and naturally he said hello, and he started to talk to me again. And I thought, gee, I would really like to get this gentleman's name, and perhaps talk to him after work or something, because we have so much in common. I think we can learn something from one another. I even thought he could benefit me in a way, because I was in a bad way at this time, and I actually thought that he could help, and I'm sure he could have, because he wanted to, and I could have helped him. It was an exchange of something that could have benefited us. But I thought, oh, you know, I need to, you know, like, be able to contact him maybe, at least, or at least see him when he finishes the work and have a proper chat, because obviously he was working there. I didn't want to stand there for hours, you know, talking, you know. But anyway, this is the point, is immediately I thought that, it come into my mind. But of course, like I say, our minds are not our own. And this proved it to me, and I knew it when it happened. Immediately, someone come out of the hotel, and it was another security person or whatever, and he sort of said, look, you can't be talking to that lady, you know, you're talking too long, you got to do your job, come on in and take a break right now, you know. And I was actually sorry for him, because he got upset, because he was talking emotionally to me about his relationship or something at the time. And basically they were saying, look, come and take a break now. Take your break now. You know, come and take your lunch break, or, well, it wasn't lunch, but, you know, take your break. And he's like, oh, I've had this. He didn't fly into a rage, but he's like, I could see that he basically got upset because he knew what was going on. I did too. I could see it instantly because I was starting to wake up. And essentially, I thought, I hope he's just taken the break and comes back and does his job, and I won't bother him too much. Maybe if I come past again, I'll just say, hey, if you like to meet me in an hour down and have a chat on the seat or something after you've done work, maybe, or whatever, and we can discuss things, but I don't want to make you lose your job or anything, get into trouble. Even though you would think that in that job, if you're working at a hotel and you're a security person outside, you'd think that it would be a good thing to chat and be pleasant to the customers, because it wasn't like he wasn't doing his job. He was still checking people as they went in with the ID, I noticed, because not people weren't piling into that place and out anyway. You only had like one person going in every 10 minutes or something like that. Maybe not even that, it depends on how busy they were. But essentially, I could see as he was like, oh, I've had this, like, because they said, we've told you before, you can't be talking to her and you can't be talking to people, you can't be chatting to people, even though he probably thought, hey, I'm doing a good job chatting to the customers, the potential customers, to go in and being pleasant, rather than being a nasty security man where people say, I think I'll avoid this pub. But anyway, that's the point, is that he went in there because they basically pulled him off his job and told him to come in, and someone come out and took his place, despite the fact that it obviously wasn't his break. That was obvious because he knew that too, and I could see that he was angry. And what I'm saying is that he threw that job in, because he's like, hey, I'm not going to. I didn't see it. I just didn't see him after that. He just immediately went in because they said, come on in, take your break, get off the, get away. Someone else is taking your place there for a bit. But I could see he was angry, because I never saw him again. He never, I walk past there every day, and he didn't work there every day, but part-time probably was, but I never saw him again. So basically he threw the job in, or they might have even told him, hey, perhaps you better find another job. I don't know, but certainly that was an example for me, even at the time, even though I wasn't anywhere near as aware of things as what I am now. And I didn't know the whole picture. I only knew there were funny things going on at that time. I knew there was a little control system going on at a local kind of level, almost, you could really say. Although I was starting to realise as time went on that it went beyond local, but what I'm saying is that, in other words, I didn't have the bigger picture at that point, but I still knew that was a deliberate thing at that time even, and it was the Matrix basically stopping me from having an interaction with someone that could have benefited me and I could have benefited him. We both needed it at the time. We both needed to exchange that well, we were both almost depressed because of the loss and because of the interaction with narcissistic individuals that had brought us down and to where we probably, and that would have done us good. So our vibration would have went up a bit. And we certainly needed it at the time, but that was deliberately intercepted by the Matrix. That's just an example of it. Now, you would say, look, you're overseeing something, but it's happened a million times. That's just one small example. Once you see it, you know it. And I knew it even at the time, even though I had not at that time analysed the Matrix or all the examples that were happening to me or anyone else. No, I hadn't at that time. But I still knew at that particular incident when it happens, hey, oh my goodness, it was so obvious. It was like, hey, get out of here. You're not allowed to talk to her. And they must have known that I might have made an arrangement to speak to him again, to where we could have spoke freely, or even if he gave me his phone number, I could have perhaps rang him up or so, but I was aware of that. I thought, hey, I've got to get something about this gentleman to discuss, because I became psychic, almost a bit psychically aware that something would happen, because at this stage I was realizing that the matrix was negative, and that things were negative for me. And there was some other thing too with him, which I'm not going to go into, where I actually was going to ask him to do something that he wanted to do that would have helped him and that would have suited me at the time, which would have relieved a burden from me. Because it wasn't like I was seeing him in terms of a relationship or anything like that. No way. It was just purely, purely, oh, he was a lot younger than me anyway. But either way, I wasn't thinking that way about it. It was purely an exchange to where we could have benefit, and we were exchanging our experiences. Because it's very hard when you have that kind of experience. It's hard to find, even if you went to a doctor to talk about things. Most of them don't know about all these things, and most of them are of that type themselves anyway. So you're wasting your time. And this is what I say, you either experience things and you know them, or you don't. And this is much more important, much more valuable to you than all the information and all the facts. This is the problem, is getting through to people to see how their reality is so, how it's not their world and not their reality. They're not in control of their thinking at all. We're not masters of our own domain by any means, none of us. And even that example, see, that opportunity was just taken right from under my feet, as many others have, right in front of me, and there was nothing I could do about it. And I probably should have tried to calm the fella down and say, hey, but at the time I thought, hey, I hope he's just gone for his break, and I hope he comes back to his job, and if I see him again, I won't do anything there to cause. I won't talk to him while he's outside there if I can see that's going to just be stopped. Might say, give me your telephone number, I'll give you mine, or whatever, and we could have a chat or something else. That was what I thought at the time, but that was immediately stopped. And of course, my life has been, I haven't had that opportunity again, and I knew it was a deliberate ploy, because that sort of random opportunity like that doesn't come along very often. But every time it does, the matrix will close it down. That's just an example of it. They don't want you to talk to anyone that might raise your vibration or help you. They want you to be with the negative people that keep the vibration down. This is how it works. If he had been a negative individual, I would have been allowed to stand there and talk to him for hours, But if it's a positive interaction, it will not be tolerated by the matrix. Not at this time, and not by individuals that they think will even raise the vibration a little bit. This is how it seems to work. This was my experience, and this has always been my experience. And that was just a small example of how the matrix closes the potential for expanding yourself and raising the vibration a little bit, even just making your life comfortable, if you want to look at it at a basic level. But there is more to it than that, because really you'd think, what harm is there to a God entity if two people exchange a little bit of common sympathy about an experience they've had in recent times? You know what I mean? That would seem pretty harmless. How could that be? But it does have a bit. The fact that it's closed down shows that it is not allowed, because it does have a benefit on you, them, and then that means any individual that raises their frequency or their vibration, or whatever you want to call it, in other words, is able to get even slightly feeling better, has an impact on other people, and that affects the matrix. And this is essentially how it works, as I've said before, and that's just an example. And I was going to talk about, I don't think I'm going to have time, and I think I'm just about had it, and the matrix is affecting my throat, etc. I may not be able to make videos for much longer. That's why I'm probably a bit frantic putting a few out. But I was going to use examples of how the matrix and the statement that I make always, that our thought creates reality. Should I do it? Should I risk the anger of the matrix by saying it? I'll give it a go. But time is of the essence too. But look, thought creates reality. Human beings' thought creates reality. They don't know it, they do it consciously and subconsciously, and heaven only knows what else, because we are kept from it. And we're all connected, okay? So we're all psychic, really. Psychic in a 100% way if we were at our highest level, I believe. In other words, my thought would go instantly to the next person. Not only my thought, but everything that goes with it. I wouldn't have to be fiddling around with all the silly words like I do here now, where I can't get my idea across even with the correct words. I'm floundering, as you know. My concept would instantly go to another human being. That's at the highest level, but we still have it, because this is what I was going to try and prove. I can't prove it, but I prove it to myself every day, and I could prove it to other people if they basically became aware of it, because people are aware of this. Human beings are aware that they often think things, right? And that then that thing will pop up, or something they thought about will occur, or something they thought about will materialise, shall we say, manifest. Interesting, they call a show on the TV Manifest. They do like to make fun of us. They do, the gods do like, I would say this, where their playthings and their toys, and this gets me a little bit angry, and I shouldn't be angry at the gods, but the truth is that they do show you the truth in plain sight on your TV, in your movies. There again, another example, and they flaunt it in front of you as if to say, this is fantasy. You poor little humans, you could never do these things. This is your fantasy. This is make-believe. But they laugh then, because they say, hey, that's what humans are supposed to be doing. But they don't know that. They think that's an advanced program. They think that that's something supernatural, something that could never be. And that's what they're meant to be doing. Instead, we do that to them. We play them. We use everything. We manifest what we want through them. They don't manifest what they want. No, they don't create what they want. We do it. We get what we want through them. And then they laugh at us when they show the programs of people that can do these things, or shows that go into the future, or they're a bit supernatural. Everything that is there is what is possible and what exists. But we are kept in the dark, like limited, so that we cannot come into power, and into power, you could say, or into our full abilities, and become aware to where we will have a choice. And well, obviously, if we did probably come at that level, we would have no need of the matrix, and we certainly wouldn't probably be interested in playing in it. Why would we? Especially as we are the mice and the animals in it, and we would, but instead it's thrown up to us, and they get a laugh. We're their entertainment, we're their comedy TV show. Look, we put a show on about manifesting and about supernatural stuff, and how that we can do this and all that, or whatever, and all these things, and we laugh at the little humans watching it on their little box or on their computer that we have full control over, and they think that's fantasy, and it should be theirs. Instead, it's ours. And we think they're funny because they're reduced to so little. They're like they're just like, we've they're like little puppets on a string, and we just play and we laugh at them. They're our amusement. They're our comedy show for the week, shall we say? That's how I see it when I see the shows that are pointing it out, and that we think I'm saying, hey, they really they must laugh because they set all this up, and yet they show us everything, as I've said, in plain sight, hidden but in plain sight. They show us everything. All I say is, if you look at all your TV and all your movies, it's all there for you. Don't listen to me. Look at it and say, this is a possibility. And this is the now, and this will be the future. But it should even be now, most of anything else should even be now. Anything that has a human level is what you should be able to do, and much, much more. And they probably get quite a big buzz out of it, because if you kind of look at it in another way, if there is a spiritual kind of connotation to it, which there probably would be, and they actually like to make fun of humans almost, and belittle them because they might be revered as something special by other beings, then they get a big buzz out of doing that. I would think it would be funny for them. But human beings don't know this. Even those that, I would think that even those that worship would not probably be so aware of that. This is just what I think, because humans laugh at one another. We do that too. See, we're like them now, and this is what it is. It's just all big one fake comedy, and but we are we're the players, and we're in their comedy show, and we don't know that we're being laughed at. I'm aware that I'm being laughed at. I'm aware that I've been laughed at all my life, and been manipulated, and been and still are. And this is my last thing. And and yes, I am quite afraid in a way. But at any rate, I just finish up by saying this, right? Human beings' thought creates reality, and we're all connected. Now, when you think of something and it manifests, I'll try to use an example, but I'm getting so tired I should really be leaving it for another video. Look, if I'm walking down the street, right, and I'm walking with someone else, let's say it's a friend or a relative or whatever, right, and we start to have a conversation, say, about automobiles, about cars. This has actually happened to me in the past, okay? And one of the friend that's next to me, or the relative, the person next to me says, starts talking about cars. And in their mind, they are thinking about a particular car. They may even say a particular car. Supposing they're a little bit more into cars and love cars, they might say, they might start talking about a Porsche or something like that, right? I'm using that as an example, okay? And they go walking down the street with me, and then, what do you know, a Porsche is pulled up on the, on the side of the footpath. And they say, oh, wow, isn't that funny? We were talking about cars, and look, and whether they were thinking it consciously or subconsciously, whether they verbalized it, probably doesn't matter. But they're aware that they were liking that car and wanting it. And it materialized, it visualized, it manifested. They would say that is just a coincidence. And then it happens further down the road. They see another Porsche or something, that sort of thing. And I say, oh, wow, that's a coincidence. So funny that I'm thinking. And they might even dismiss it even in their own mind. They might think, oh, and they might even just think, oh, yeah, I really like that car. They might even be not even fully conscious that they've been thinking of that particular car. But it's there. But of course, you would say, what use is that to the human being? That's right. See, that is an example. And then also, I would also add that don't forget, while we're walking, this has happened to me. I also have talked about a car, but I have talked about a very small car. Might have even said to someone, oh, what was that really little car when I was a kid that everyone used to drive? That would be handy for me now. And it appears, this has happened so many times where I say these same little cars popping up everywhere. And I put it down to coincidence too, but I don't now because I know better. But it visualizes too. Another coincidence, and the person next to me might even say, "Isn't that funny? Oh, that's that car you talked about too. It's here too." But but the point is, we manifested. Our thought created thinking. Our thought created reality. Our thinking, our thought created the real thing in front of us. But you'd say, "What's the use?" That's right, and that's the point. We created the reality, but we are in the matrix. We are in this construct that controls everything, that is operated by systems and money and what I'm trying to say is we manifested, but it's no good to him, my friend, my companion, my relative or whatever, whoever it is next to me, or me, because we manifested. But we can't drive that car. It's someone else's car. If we want that car, we have to go to a dealer and pay thousands and thousands of dollars, which we may or may not have. And then, lo and behold, my friend, he's manifested his car, but he doesn't have a license. Neither do I. And then, because you see what I'm trying to get, I'm sure I'm losing you, but you have to get this concept. That should have been ours. We should have been able to get in that car and drive it away, but it's not ours. I know you're thinking I'm crazy, but it's not ours because we are in this artificial construct which demands that you go to the dealer and buy it. And so we visualize, but we can't have it because of the system we live in, because it's an Archon controlled domain. I don't know whether you're following me here. I'm not getting it across right, I don't think. And even if, I was able to buy that car, if I had the money, haven't got the license, then I have to go to all the trouble of getting the license, which I may or may not be able to get. Well, I wouldn't be anyway, but not now at my age. But the person that I'm talking about did just that. And then the car was, this is in the past, this is a real thing, okay? Able to actually buy the car even and get the license. And the vibration rising. But lo and behold, the car is stolen and burnt out. Twice, same car. Coincidence, not the matrix. This is even when you do it their way. This is even when you do it their way in the matrix, because the vibration cannot rise, despite the fact that, yes, you can visualize it, but you can't take it. You can't have that car because the matrix has all the rules. You live in the matrix. You let the matrix make the rule. You allow the systems. You want the systems. We have let the matrix and the God entity set up a control matrix system that demands that we have to work for what we create. Now, this is sounding bizarre, I know, and I could have it slightly wrong, only in the sense that I've always personally believed at this point that humans do create in this reality, and that their thought creates reality, tangible physical stuff. But at the same time, they also have a connection and a control over the natural things, and vice versa. I have always been sure of that. But the actual materialization of technical things, I would have had a bit of doubt about, right? In other words, my thought actually materializing a car, I would have said was not quite, I was not sure if that was 100% possible because I'm a limited person too. I don't have all the answers. I'm not at the high frequency to know what we can or can't do 100%. But I was pretty convinced of the nature part of things because that's what we originally meant to interact with anyway. Automobiles were never really meant to be part of our domain because we wouldn't have needed them at high frequency because we could basically maneuver ourselves anywhere anyway. You know, this is my knowledge and my understanding of things, you see. So, oh dear. Yes, the body, oh dear. But but getting back to that, if you take it to be true, because these coincidences, I just started to then wonder, like, can you not materialize anything with your thinking? But in the matrix, even if you're able to do that, even if you do, it won't be yours. That you might be able to materialize many things. You might think of something and it'll be in a shop window, but you will have to go into that shop and pay for it. It won't just be yours, you see. So you see how our thought and our whole world has been taken over from us, if you know what I mean. We can only acquire things through the matrix now, even with thought, even though we are creating it. Do you follow what I'm saying? Because it's a concept that I'm not sure I'm getting across, and like I say, I'm not 100% sure about that. I'm pretty sure. It does happen anyway, so I'm sure of that. Um, why it happens with the technical things, that would really mean that we're even more advanced than what even I would have conceived. That's about all I could say on that one, because I was pretty sure that we had some influence on the natural world and that is interaction with us. That's on the knowledge that we originally were here in the Garden of Eden type thing, if you like. Doesn't matter whether you say Garden of Eden or just the beginning of when we were put here or arrived here, whatever. Seated here, I would say, if it's a garden or if it's like the living library where we were meant to develop and interact with all the natural things and expand ourselves and them that way, because it was like a one. And it was all organic and natural, but also supernatural, I suppose you could say, by our standards. Because if you don't believe that you have any impact on the environment apart from what they tell us, which is a different story altogether, then, and also, if our thought creates reality, even if there was bad stuff at a physical level, we should be able to counter that, but we don't do that because we're not aware that we can do it. So we're in a bit of a joke, really, I think, but I know I'm sounding quite probably ridiculous to a lot of people, and it sounds ridiculous to me even as I'm saying it, and I don't know what to do about it, or but that example of manifesting, right, and me manifesting or materializing something that I was thinking, that car, the little car appearing all the time. Um, but like I say, not being able to acquire it except by the means of the matrix, you know, because our world is run by money. We've allowed money instead of us just materializing, shall we say, what we want and it being ours. And you know, of course, if we were really spiritual beings and at the highest level, we would not probably want or need a car. That's true, but even at the level we are at, it still happens that way, that we can manifest and we can create, which even things that are not natural. And whether this is true or not, I just tell you these stories. I just tell you these stories, but also the example of when the individual manifested the car twice, burnt out and destroyed, and then the license taken because probably from just too many parking fines and things, because the mind parasites say, hey, park in there quick, you're in a hurry, you've got to get to your job, You'll only be 2 seconds, you'll be right, ends up with, and then lose your license. So then no car. Your dream gone, your car gone. Because even when you operate for the matrix, you want the car. You should be able to manifest it and have it free for yourself, I would say. But even when you do it their way and go and buy it and get the license and work for them, slave for them, if your frequency starts to rise by the happiness that car brings you, or what you're doing in the car, or the matrix will take that from you, because you can only operate in the matrix at low frequency. It's a low frequency matrix vibration world, and until unless at this present time, when humans were meant to be raising that vibration and waking up to the matrix and seeing it, basically seeing it. But then again, it comes down, as I've said before, extra hard at the present time so that we won't see it. And the few that do see it, like myself, well, they're like, hey, she's gone anyway, so we don't care if she sees it. In fact, we'll play with her a bit more. Let her see it. Let's play. It's more negative energy because it creates stress, because even seeing the matrix causes stress if you haven't believed in it, like myself, and if you realise that it is a daunting task to get others to see it at the present time, even though it should have been a cakewalk, as they say, if that's the thing, because it should have been just everyone, because if there wasn't so much interference, most people would see it. It's the technical interference, I think, that is preventing the matrix from being totally exposed to most people. And even because there again, don't forget that even those of us like myself that are frightened to see the matrix as it really is, because we are, and I am too, if you know that everyone else is seeing it, then there is no fear. It's only because the few are seeing it on their own, and then you have to deal with it on your own, that is the problem. Or if it's only a few people. But if you knew that almost everyone was seeing it, then you're not frightened, because you're all going to be joint, simpatico, and the not only the vibration will rise, but even just that awareness of everyone agreeing that, hey, we were conned, we were tricked, and now we have a choice. Do we keep playing this, or do we acknowledge this? Do we want the God entities? Do we want this world? How do we want to change it? Do we want to change? We would have a choice, a clear, real choice, though, as opposed to where we're given the choice, but like we see it on the TV or on the movies, but we don't think it is a choice. We think that's the fantasy world, and our little limited world is the real world. The matrix, when it's exposed, you realise that you're dealing with entities, powers, and technologies and things that are beyond your imagination. And also you realise that you yourself are beyond your imagination, because you don't realise what you could and should be capable of, and were meant to be, because the matrix would not be keeping you down and keeping all this from you if it were not true, and would not be limiting you if you didn't have potential. If you were just a willing slave and really just a cat or a dog, like a mouse, like they see us, they wouldn't have to do anything, because you would already be inferior and they would have no trouble controlling you. But it's because you're not really inferior that they have to do huge amounts of things, huge amounts of games and deceptions and all sorts of fantasy, trickery, and witchcraft, and all these seduction, and sending you in every direction that this world does, with all its vast, ridiculous, insane, one would have to say lies, really, because basically it's all lies. It's not the truth. The opposite of truth is lies. You're told lies by people. You believe the lies. You believe what you are. You believe what your history is. You believe what you as what you were told you are, what the world is, everything. And it's all to keep you inferior, not to me that has to be the case, because otherwise when you see the Matrix and you see that it is fantasy, you have to say, well, they wouldn't create a fantasy world if it wasn't to keep humans in a fantasy world so that they're limited and so that they don't see that they are um, creating in that fantasy world, but doing it negatively because their minds are directed, instead of their own full mind directing everything and making the reality they want, it is directed and manipulated and controlled by the Archon God entities and them and the humans that operate and work for them. Even those that don't know they're working for them are working for them. They're working to keep this illusion going. And you wouldn't mind that even, but it's not a positive illusion. That's what I would say. That's my main criticism of it. If it was a positive or even balanced illusion, you could say we could tolerate it, but it's a purely negative illusion. It has a negative end for humans, you know. It doesn't have a negative end for the Archons if the plan goes right through, because they're going to create a scenario that serves them, or at least serves them for a while anyway. But it will not serve the eternal spiritual human being. No, it can't, because that's not, it never has. And like I say, the examples that I use with the car, even figure it out yourself. Like, we're doing things the hard way. We're slaving and stressing and straining to try to raise our vibration in a material way to get things even, to make us happy. And we shouldn't have to. And that's another thing that turns us against other human beings too, because we compare to then others that have these things, that have more money and stuff, and we think, oh, this is unfair, and we get jealous. And that's all part of the Matrix too, to make us feel that way. That's to bring us down. Whereas in reality, everyone should be able to have what they want or need. There would be no competition. No one would care, because and also I think, I'm not going to go there in this video, but if we all, this is what I'm starting to see now, that if we all knew what is really going on, even at the human level with humans, and the different, we tend to think that if we really knew how little really humans are actually left that will be working for that goal of humanity surviving, in my opinion, in a way. If you really knew how few people were actually had that end goal and how many are actually serving and working against it, most human beings would jump onto this bandwagon I'm talking about very quickly, but they're not aware of this and they don't think it exists, and they don't realise how few are actually on their side, shall we say, even. And this is what it is, because anything that is anything or anyone, regardless of what you're doing, if it's working against your survival as a species, and you don't know it though, you don't know that your very actions, most people are unaware that their very actions, even on quite simple things, even on just saying, hey, this is my body, I should be able to do what I want with it. Okay, that's another example that I've used before. What harm can it do to anyone else? What has it got to do with anyone else? And it shouldn't. But we are in a matrix of, of entities that control things, that don't think that way, and that are not operating for all of us to actually have the greatest life. So therefore, you know, if you see the whole picture, if it starts to come to you, you see it in a different light. So you say, yes, the individual matters, and it shouldn't matter what they do, but it actually does, because we are all being used for the end result that is put in play by the Matrix, if you follow me. but we're unaware of that. And I better fold up because, I went on too long, and I don't think I did a good job here today. I don't think I put it across very well, and I'm sorry about that. I should just stick with one little thing, perhaps, and keep on track. Hope someone's been able to follow it with a bit of consistency, because I know that I apologise for not being able to put it consistently and for going all over the place. And if that, then it doesn't serve any purpose. And but anyway, I better fold up anyway, because I'm sure most of you have gone to sleep, and I wouldn't blame you. But I try to use examples, but I can't always find good ones. You see, when you experience something yourself, it becomes clear. But getting it across to another person, you only hope. What I would say to every person is try to use your own experience. Think about everything you do yourself and your own experience, and see what pops up, see what you can create, see if things don't somehow. I'm not saying that in this world now that it will be hard, because we do have so much intervention. I'm talking about technical intervention mainly. I don't think this gives us much hope of opening our lines, shall we say. You know what I mean? Instead, we've got the artificial lines, and they are open, and they're open for me to communicate with someone out there, but it is still not my line. It is the line of the matrix, and it is limited in the sense that it will only get through to whatever the matrix either allows, or where you really have to make a real effort to get across to anyone, to even just physically communicate, whereas in reality we should just be instantly transferring thoughts. That's how I see it, and so this is really doing it. And yes, once again, I'm sure the Archon gods, when I say gods, I should say God, there's probably only one God ruler at a time, one head. I've always said this, but I don't know this, of course. But there's many gods, as I've said before, but it's who you allot to be your God that will be the God. You have a choice. People don't realise this, but I'm sure that if you've got a group of beings, it's still up to you whether you accept the circumstances or bow down to that being. Doesn't mean it's the only God that you could have, but it's your choice which God you have. That's why even in the Bible, I think it does say, you shall not have any other gods before me, something like that. This is what someone said to me not long ago. I get all this stuff from others, but if I know it's true, I wish that I could give credit to many more sources, and I probably should, but you will find other sources, but yeah, you will not have any other gods before, because the God that rules this world, he's like, I am your God. You could have other gods, but I will not tolerate you having other gods. You either have me as the God, acknowledge me, but you cannot say there are others or acknowledge others. He's a possessive, jealous God, which is what it does say too. And that's like some people. You see, this is it. Yourself, there are some people that demand that you only love them. And even our society tends to teach us that, doesn't it? That you can only have one partner. And I'm not saying this is good or bad, by the way. This is not the point I'm making. I'm saying that mentally you should still not be possessive, though. I'm not here to put standards on anyone. I don't even think that way. But it's how you think mentally is what I'm saying. You know how some people, they get jealous even if they've got, they get jealous if you talk to someone else or if you smile at someone else, even though your intention you still might still be very loyal to your husband or your wife or whoever, your partner or whatever. You you prefer some people to others. Look, love is a thing, isn't it, really? Humans are probably meant to be more universal love, I would think, in a funny kind of way. But that doesn't mean they aren't going to prefer the company of some people over others in this realm. This is only as far as I know in this realm. Who knows what you would really think if you got to a high enlightened level? You may not even live or think the way you do in this actual world. You probably might not even favour some people much over others. I don't know. I'm not sure because I'm not there, but I'm guessing that it could be totally different even. But even in this world, some people are far too possessive and a bit like the God himself, where it's like, don't acknowledge anyone else at all. There's only the one. You only, and some people are like that. They want to be, they demand to be exclusive, and you might even be exclusive to some people, but even that might not be enough. If they are slighted, if you are talking to someone else, even that's their problem really, because in reality you might favour them. You obviously probably would, but it's that mindset. It is a very controlling, kind of possessive, insecure mindset in a way. And it can be a problem to people like myself or anyone else who's a little bit more free minded, in the sense that you might have your loyalties and your more love towards one person, but you still probably wouldn't see any harm in exchanging with someone else. You don't have anything against them either, whereas the problem lies with the God or the person, to where they are so insecure and so demanding that they demand 100% or 110%, which is hard and also restricts, um, as it does humans with the God. It restricts the humans' ability to reach their full potential and to be free and happy. You can love someone greatly, but if that person demands too much, is too possessive and restricts you because of their insecurity, that limits you. And this is what happens. This is what's happened to me in my life. It's been like, you love someone, but they don't just accept the fact that you love them, and even if you put them on a pedestal, or even if you are prepared to go with them, even sometimes even um, go along with most of what they want. But it becomes like, sometimes it can become like, no matter how much you do, there will still be that they will want 110% for you to go along with them, to where you are then not you, to where you don't have any, you know. But hey, I'm going off on track here, because this is a dangerous conversation too in today's world, because that's that's how people can get into a conflict. But it is a hard thing. You have to be able to discern and say what's reasonable or what is um, thing, without just jumping onto the business of, oh, you are the full controlling force. And this is the problem, is there's no meeting in the centre a lot now, with a lot of partners even, and a lot of partnerships, whether it be love relationships, professional, family, even friendships. Sometimes you have to meet in the center. That's probably how it's really meant to be. But instead, if you have one person that wants it all their way, then the other person has to go totally to that. So that person has to give up their freedom and their individuality almost, and even their identity, if you like. I don't know, I'm trying to find words here. I know I'm using the wrong ones. I don't like those words, because this is the trick of today's world, is that people use all these things. And I find that I'm clear on it in my own mind, but to use the words identity, what does that mean? What does identity mean? Is my identity the way I look? Is my identity my job? Is my identity my money? Is my identity my personality? Is my identity, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's like that. And we become very, but you just have to know yourself really. And we're often not even allowed to be ourselves in this world. We're told how we should think, how we should be. And then if we have other people in our life that do the same thing, to where they're like, oh, they're right, they think that we should live a certain way. They think this, only their opinion or their way is right. Then the other person is very much compromised, as we are humans in this bigger picture. It happens in our smaller picture in our personal lives, and it happens on the bigger scale as well, because we're not aware of the bigger scale. We're aware of the personal scale, as I became in later years, but then I became aware of the bigger picture as well, and realised that the bigger picture controls the smaller picture, and vice versa, in a funny kind of way. But essentially they control the bigger picture by controlling our personal lives in the smaller picture. That's how it really works. That's how the matrix kind of works at my level and yours, you know. You know, it works different if you're a person of power, obviously, I would think, but that's how it works. I better get going. Good night to everybody. Thank you for listening.